We have microphones, so if you're out, so everyone can feel free to join if you want to. There's no obligation, or if you have, yeah, you might as well. Oh, man.
And
Yeah.
Barb just joined.
Oh, great. Oh, good. Hey, Barb. Sarah Karen Duncan. Yes, I should have made brownies. All right,
That's
we have
a great
we have
idea.
We have eight of us now. I mean, cruising.
I like that idea, Mark.
What was it? What was it?
Pizza and budget
Oh, why haven't
committee.
we do that? Yeah.
Well, you all have the power to recommend a meal allowance for the budget committee.
All right. Okay, so great. And I did resend the same link, and hopefully that worked. Otherwise, if there's a new one, then yeah. Okay, so you ready to start?
We are ready.
All right.
All right. So we are going over the first item, tab 8, pages 30 through 33. So I'm gonna give a little bit of the background presentation on debt, capital, and contingency. All right, so we have some debt that is going to be retiring this year. So this will be the final financial year of the debt service payments for the demolition of the tannery, as well as the Rawson Avenue pump station upgrades. So those together, it's a little over $106,000 worth of annual debt service that will be falling off after FY26. So we're also adding debt. So there's a number of pieces of equipment that we purchased over the past couple of years where the payments for those is coming online. So that includes the public works sidewalk loader, so the new sidewalk plow, the groomer that was voted on at town meeting last year, the new building that's out at the Snow Bowl, the first payment for that is coming online, as well as the interest, the bond anticipation note interest for the major infrastructure borrowing that was approved by voters in June of 2024. So that, because with the ban, you're only paying for the amount of money that you're drawing down. We're drawing down money in anticipation of the Molyneux Road sewer extension and all the soft costs around the John Street sewer extension, as well as Park Street, and some other planning for other areas. So we're looking at $128,000 worth of debt service that's going to be split with the wastewater special revenue fund. There needs to be a bit of a conversation about how that split works. We have a little bit of a rule of thumb as to, what we saw from a project like Pearl Street in terms of the amount that the budget went towards wastewater related expenses as opposed to everything else, which would fall more under general fund expenses. So we will have to have a conversation about that because the select board will make the ultimate recommendation on that, but I think that they would appreciate the budget committee weighing in on how that works as well. So just to give you a little bit of an idea, with Pearl Street, about 1/5 of the costs were general fund costs. So that's stormwater, sidewalk, street trees, curbing, loaming, all the other expenses that didn't have to do with the installation of the sewer line and the replacement of the laterals along that area. However, if we are to split up everything so that 4/5 of those costs are going towards the wastewater department, that's really going to raise rates quite significantly, quite fast. So at some point, we might want to talk about what level of general fund support is the town willing to consider contributing to help with the cost of any sort sewer infrastructure improvements, so that it isn't creating a situation where we have unaffordable wastewater rates. So looking ahead to FY27, because this is significant, a lot of the borrowing that we make decisions about this year is going to have an impact on not this financial year that we're discussing for this budget, FY26, but in FY27. Because by the time we've organized a lot of the borrowing, a lot of the actual debt service payments don't come online until the next financial year. So looking ahead to what we're retiring, we've got debt from a large sort of bond that was done where a number of projects were funded all at once, and that included the sewer line replacement down here on Washington Street for the bridge. So it was called the Bakery Bridge, and there was a line that ran underneath it, and that was replaced, I think about 10 years ago, as well as the town clock that the town helped with fixing the town clock, which is on the steeple for the Baptist church. There was a float replacement. There was some, I believe, stormwater work done on Hardin Avenue. And we're also going to be retiring the debt from the code enforcement vehicle.
You just, I think Holly is on, can I just have someone from the town office just looking at what's in that chat? Or at least, or I just have it because I don't have my laptop.
Okay, you want me to ask Holly to monitor
If-
what's going on in the chat?
Yeah, I only see a couple as best I can read, but I just want to make sure there's not
Okay.
something coming up that I can't
Holly, can you let us know if there's anything Sarah should?
relay.
I will. There's nothing there. We just wanted a mic for
Okay,
Mark. It's
all right,
good.
thanks, Holly, I appreciate it.
Yep.
All right, so with the infrastructure bond coming on board, and the idea was to use this money to leverage sources of federal funding, which is becoming more and more uncertain every single day. So, unfortunately, it looks like that 12.5 million isn't going to go quite as far as we hoped it would go. But also there's some FY26 CIP borrowing. So the debt service increase. Oh gosh, I knew you were going to ask that and I forgot the acronym. Jody, can you help me out? Yeah, just general capital improvement program borrowing. The debt service is going to increase by about 124% over FY25. So that's everything that I just went over, the largest and most significant being the infrastructure bond. So this just sort of gives you an idea of, the breakdown in different categories. So, like we're saying, that the tannery demolition falling off, but also if you look at sort of the major categories, the redevelopment at the Snow Bowl, if we look at all the wastewater debt from prior years that has been funded through the general fund, just amalgamation of capital infrastructure debt. We break out debt specifically for the dams so you could get an idea of what that looks like. The energy efficiency was the project we did with Siemens to do upgrades to all the buildings, and then capital equipment. That's all the different leases for vehicles and other equipment that the departments need. And this kind of gives you a visual representation of those categories and what it's going to look like over the next few years in terms of what we've already obligated ourselves to paying in debt service. And this gives you an idea of the proportion of debt by type for FY26, so the financial year that you're currently reviewing the budget for.
What are those categories? Can you read those?
Yep, sorry about that. So the tannery demolition is the light blue, RMRA is the orange, wastewater is purple, capital infrastructure, which is the largest share, is yellow, the dams are red, energy efficiency upgrades are green, and capital equipment is the dark blue. So in addition to debt service, we're also proposing to fund some of our capital reserves. So $25,000 to the Snow Bowl for unanticipated equipment or facility expenses. So this would be the general fund having a capital reserve to help out with the Snow Bowl for any unforeseen expenses. $40,000 for the river habitat restoration project as matching funds towards that project. So one of the consequences of not meeting the November timeframe to vote on that project is that it extended it. And so there's just more expenses associated with it. 25,000 for the harbor and public landing projects and infrastructure needs. So that's really putting that money away for future projects that we can anticipate that we're going to need to fund. All right, so that is it in terms
Karen
of.
Karen has a question.
Sure.
On the river restoration matching funds, what are we matching? Who are we matching?
It would be the NIFWIF grant that we're currently working on. So that $1.6 million grant.
Okay.
And then for the, and I know we'll get into more details, but for that, the snowball, that I think it was 25,000. And don't quote me on from last year, but remember last year there was like closer to like wasn't there like a $300,000 infusion
Yes.
of, so is that now that's the updated number as compared to what was done last year, or is that?
No, so the 300, actually, I think it was more like 400,000.
It's like I said, don't quote me on, I have.
Yeah, that was to cover the operational
Yeah,
shortfall.
For sure, yeah.
So this would be different. This would be more like, midway through the year. I think a good example was, what Jeff's going to have to help me with the terminology, the panel on the VFD drive. There was a,
You didn't mind, yeah. Just, you didn't, yeah, you know.
So the example Audra's referring to is when we lost the functionality to make snow because there was a power surge that took out the variable frequency drive, which is the panel that allows us to charge the pumps.
Got it, okay.
so, if something unforeseen like that happens, having, cash on hand in one of those reserve accounts that we can use to cover emergency situations. So building that fund up, which is different than, the town covering operational shortfalls, which usually would come out of like the unassigned fund balance. But we'll talk about that again when we get to
Yeah,
Jeff's.
okay. Okay. No, I don't see any hands up online, so. Any questions or?
So Audra, it's Deb. So just help me understand when you might dip into a reserve account to cover operational expenses, or when it looks like a budget's coming in really high. I looked at all those reserve accounts, and so when do you dig in there?
So there could be a number of scenarios. So it could be, depending on the account, like a piece of equipment breaks that was unforeseen, like the example with Jeff and the snowball. Dave St. Laurent, of course, has a lot of equipment that, sometimes we'll need to dip into some of his reserves to cover it. Same thing with like our IT related fund. There could be other times, and this is typically done during the budget process, when we know that we have a planned capital project. And this happens a lot with the harbor, where we want to self-fund it or, reduce the overall amount of money that we raise through the next financial year to fund that project. So to do that, we'll dip into it, one of the capital reserve accounts. Or another scenario, we have like the accrued benefits reserve. So somebody retires, mid-year, and we weren't necessarily planning for it. That would, pay out the vacation time or any, accrued time that we owe them.
And regarding the sewerage expansion projects, how do residents buy into that, and how does that all work?
So do you mean the financial side of it, or how do they?
Mhm.
So what we did in FY25 is we put out the question asking for authorization to borrow $12.5 million. And we made it clear that it was primarily going to be for fixing our collection system, our wastewater collection system, because there's a lot of issues with it where there's, water flowing in and flowing out of the broken pipes in the system. And, that's very costly, and it's causing environmental issues, but also to do other infrastructure upgrades. So, it's really that borrowing that's going to allow us to do that infrastructure work, because it's, those expensive projects that, we can't self-fund or
Mhm. I
self-finance.
guess I'm trying to understand as well, like with the Molyneux Road extension, how do residents in that area
Oh,
buy?
okay. I see what you're saying. So, like with Molyneux Road, and this is a great, a great time to kind of talk about that. So there was never, a portion of Molyneux Road, there's never been sewer out there. So a lot of those residents have septic systems. So what we're telling them now is that, there's going to be, a sewer running, by their property, and we're going to stub it off so they can connect into it. We're going to ask that they inspect their septic systems, and if they're at their end of their life and they need to be replaced, this is a good opportunity to connect into the new sewer line that's running by their property. However, people that have new septic systems where it's not financially practical for them to connect in will be able to use their current system to the end of its usable life. Any elaboration on that you?
Well, what if a lot of people don't buy in? What happens?
So that system the Molyneux Road extension isn't dependent on people buying into it. But the way the ordinance is written, if we do put a line through an area that's unserviced at that point in time, they are supposed to connect unless they have a hardship. And we're using the hardship clause to allow people to continue using their current system until the estimated, we're going to use one number for the estimated lifespan of a system. So hypothetically, if you have a system and it's 15 years old and the lifespan's 20 years, in 5 years, you'll have to connect. So that's how we're handling it. Because it's going to be far less money to connect into the system than it is for you to replace the system. So I don't know if that answers your question.
But I'd say, Deb, with
Yeah.
Molyneux Road extension, the major driver for that was connecting in Mountainside, because they had, that Mountainside had a real need, and they really didn't have a better solution. And there's, a series of grants that are involved. I think, all together, it's like $2.4 million worth of grants that make it financially viable to do that project.
I got Ken or Mark and then Karen for questions.
I just want to add, I live off where I have to have a septic system. And it went bad and I had to replace it maybe 6-8 years ago. And it was incredibly expensive. And I worry about it every day. I wish we had sewer lines coming where I live, because, I won't be able to afford to replace it again if it goes bad. It's scary. So
You should be good for a little while if you just had it done.
Yeah.
Karen, go ahead.
Okay, I'm a little confused because I thought I heard Audra say you didn't have to hook in there, but I hear you say, yes, you do. So
So
I got a call from somebody
Mhm.
upset that wants clarification. That's what I'm asking.
So the way the ordinance is written, if we put a system through an unserved area, by ordinance, they're required to connect unless they have a hardship. We're considering a hardship somebody who has a new or operational system. And if the system has a certain lifespan, which they all do, which, generally a system will last between 25 and 30 years. And if it's got, only a year on it, it's brand new, then they'll be able to use that system until that expected lifespan of that, not have to connect. But we will put a stub in on their property, and we are going to make sure that it's marked on their property card so that when that time expires, then they will have to connect. Because
All
at that time, their private system should be at the end of its life. And a private system that's at the end of its life, can contaminate groundwater, drinking water supplies, natural resources in the area, and it's usually non-functional after a certain period. So
All right,
that's how
does,
we're going to handle it.
does income factor into hardship? Is
So-
there a certain amount of
There's-
money that you
Yes,
can say, no, you can't do it?
there's two components to the hardship. One's the hardship clause, if you have a system already installed that's operational and fairly new. And then the other hardship, what we're doing is, if somebody has, let's say, they make enough money not to qualify for the town's grant, was it special fund for people that need
Trust fund,
assistance,
yeah.
the trust fund, we'll set up a payment plan for them so that they'll be able to, we'll connect them in. If, let's say they have a system that's at the end of its life, we're going to connect their system into the public system, and then we'll basically pay for it. And then we'll set up a payment plan for them that they can pay that off systematically through time, which, and whatever is affordable for them. If they can't afford the system based on their income, we have grant funds that they'll be able to apply for, and then that will get installed, or they'll get connected, and the cost of that will be absorbed by the grant funds. So we've set it up really to accommodate all the situations and scenarios that could happen. And we did the same thing on Pearl Street. We paid for everybody to be connected or replace their lateral, and then they paid us back over time if they could afford it. And if they couldn't, we got them grant funds to pay for it. So,
Go ahead.
Let the person know, thank you.
yeah, we're not forcing anybody out on the street to connect into the sewer.
What's the average charge to connect into the system?
So we have two types of, we have the way this system works is they're not all the same, but if you're on the downhill side, you're going to have to pump into the system. If you're on the uphill side, well, if you're on the lower end, you're going to have to pump into the system, which is slightly more expensive. That can be up to $10,000. If you are on the downhill side, you're looking at a gravity system, and it's roughly $150 a foot. So those are rough numbers. I mean, and the 10,000 may not always be 10,000. It could be, the system can be 6,000. We don't want to give an exact number right now until we've got these numbers kind of built into the bid spec for the overall job, which we get a little bit of benefit from doing it at the same time as when we do the project, because the contractor's there and already mobilized. We're going to make it as affordable and easy for people to connect into the system as possible. But if you're at the end of your life and you're looking at putting a private system, you're looking at anywhere between $25,000 and $30,000.
Hold on. I want to give Duncan a chance to, because there's a question on Zoom that I want to, either Duncan, if you're comfortable reading it, because I won't be able to read it from this far, or.
Yeah, sure. Excuse me. I just wondered if there were any grants or any money that might help people who need to install the pump systems to get the waste uphill in order to tie into the municipal system, or like that kind of pump system, or any other features of the system that only a minority or only some of the residents might require. If there would be any funds to kind of level the playing field,
I mean,
so to speak, as far as costs.
I mean, we can look into it. There's none that I'm aware of, but I mean, you have to remember that if you're in a situation where you're probably going to have to pump into the sewer line, you might be already in that same situation, pumping to your system. So.
I was just going to say, and then I can look at you one second, is that, well, first of all, as a resident, having gotten the letter, picked up my certified letter today, I'm going to reread it again and see. And is it fair to say, because again, I want to be cognizant of all the stuff we're covering, is there going to be a more informative,
Yeah.
more conversations in terms of how many folks are affected and to
So
kind
we're
of
in-
gather that? Because I just want to be mindful of what's going to impact.
So
today.
the way that we try to do all these projects is we send out a letter. We're asking people to provide us with a date to have an appointment with them. We're evaluating their property. We're going to explain what the situation is, where they fall into the category of hooking into the system. And then once we've done that and we've located where the stub is, because we're putting a stub in everybody's location. That's just, we have to do that. That's because we don't want to go back into the road after and do it.
Yeah.
So we're putting the stub there. And then we're going to have a project meeting with, like we did with Pearl Street. Everybody will come in. Everybody will be able to talk about their concerns and questions, and we'll review the sequencing of the project, the details of each person's personal property, and where they fall, and get them the necessary paperwork to apply for if they can't afford things or they want a payment plan.
Fair.
So that's kind of how we're going to
Okay,
do it.
so
So we're in the beginning phases. right
Yeah, in
now.
the beginning.
Yeah.
So is there anything specific? So again, I want to be mindful. Are there other questions specific to what we're approving today? Or, because I'm with you, I have to go, I'm going to be rereading that letter, and got my certified letter today and anyway, so just, oh, go ahead, Karen.
Just a quick question. When I contact this person, that definitely would be a hardship case,
Mhm.
who does he come to for that grant? You, Janice, town manager?
They just need to contact us, and we'll have the Public
Well,
Works
us is what,
Department- The
you?
Public Works Department.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
All right, that was really helpful. Is there any
Can I
Yeah, go-
segue into?
segue away?
All right, so to get back to the infrastructure bond or infrastructure bond anticipation note and the debt service for that. So what we've proposed for this year, because until we do that project, we're not going to know exactly what is allocated as a general fund expense versus a wastewater expense. So going into this year, not knowing that, we're just proposing a 50-50 split between the two. So it's $64,000 with a debt service for the general fund and 64 that's going to be put in the wastewater special revenue fund. So just kind of letting everyone know that it's a very unscientific methodology that we're using this year.
All right, well, I guess then not knowing also who's going to be potentially, applying for hardship, what grant funds are available, like, I don't know how many residents are impacted, but is that enough? Is there enough being thought of now without knowing what actually would be able to be?
That's just debt service.
That's just debt service, right, so, okay,
There's really not a lot of people between the park and where we're tying into.
okay.
This is a pretty small project in terms of people.
Small but mighty, we're on that little strip.
And I mean, one of the things you have to remember is this runs the gamut. Some people have brand new systems and they're not going to have to connect, or whatever the lifespan of their general system is. Other people already have a failed system. So we're picking all that up right now.
Having dug up my own septic twice and unclogged it, we'll be rereading it carefully, so. All right, so. Anything else online or? Okay,
So both the debt service interest and principal, you can vote on now, or you can wait until after we go through all the other, capital reserves and the CIPs, or, whenever you're all ready.
I mean, I'm always in favor of kind of as we go, but we'll just have, here, you gotta unmute yourself though, then you can make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we vote, is this both the principal and interest? Both pages?
If you're ready,
Uh,
yeah.
Second,
And that would be the announced, the debt service principal would be 565,761, and the debt service interest would be 265,560.
second.
Okay, so Karen.
Second.
So we have a second for discussion. My only question I have is just, is it typical, there's no differentiation between what any of the department heads had asked and town?
Yep.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
all baked in.
All baked in. Any questions or discussion online before we go to vote? All right. If you're on the budget committee, all in favor of the motion? 2, 3, who is? Duncan, okay, all opposed? Oh wait, Duncan, is that a yay or nay? I can't tell if it was a delayed. Duncan, is that a yes?
It was a yes.
It was a yes. Okay, so it passed unanimously.
Great.
Okay,
All right.
one down. Well, two.
And capital reserves, because those were pretty pared down.
Where are you, what page?
I believe those are page 32. Is it 32? sorry, I don't have my budget book.
Page 31.
31?
Yeah,
Yep,
reserves are
31.
31, improvements are 32.
Gotcha.
Yeah, 31.
So any questions about the reserve accounts?
Going once.
I'll make a motion, we approve the capital reserves, equipment and facilities debt capital contingency for 140,000.
Second.
Okay, we've got multiple seconds. Any comments or discussion before we vote? Okay, all in favor? 1, 2, 3. Okay, passes unanimously.
All right, so on to capital projects and equipment purchases.
It's on page 32. If you don't have it, we're going to share with your neighbor.
All right, so we have, the CI, or the 10-year capital improvement program is also in your budget books. It's that really big spreadsheet that kind of splits everything up by category. So if you look through that, you'll see that the need is just incredibly immense. However, it's just not practical to fund and finance every single thing that we need to repair, replace, or take on as a new project. So this year, we really, really wanted to focus on critical needs and what was most urgent at this point in time. And so there's, several projects that we've proposed, and we have different methods of how we're going to fund or finance these projects. So just starting from the top of projects that we were planning on self-funding. So the purchase of a new police cruiser. The public works facility needs to be paved, so that's in really bad condition. And that it just completely needs a new paving job. Curtis Island, the cap to the lighthouse tower is cast iron and it's starting to corrode, so that needs to be repaired and repainted. Lake Beach sustained a lot of damage during the January 2024 storms, so there needs to be shoreline stabilization work that's done there. And that's something that's eligible for some level of FEMA reimbursement. However, it's likely that to do, a bigger repair would cost a lot. So in order to just get it stabilized, we're proposing to do a scaled back project that we can self-fund. We were talking about the library capital improvement projects, which made up repointing the masonry faces of the building, as well as if there was funding left over, the replacement of the carpeting. Because we thought we would get a pretty significant reimbursement from FEMA, the $150,000 that would have been matched to the FEMA reimbursement is something that the town could self-fund. However, there's a potential that FEMA won't reimburse that project, and so that's about $500,000. So that's something that would need to be financed. There's a number of sorry, what's that?
This page?
So the library is back in the library
Okay.
budget because, it just would make it easier for them to self-manage that project. So we didn't want to include it on our list of CIPs.
Got it.
Christy and I talked about it for a while, how we would show that.
Got it. Okay. Oh, there it is. Okay.
You see it?
Yep.
Great. But that, the number, forget about that number. Pretend that number doesn't exist that we put in there. For now, anyway. Yeah. So anyway, there are several projects on this list that we can use our tax increment financing proceeds to fund. So that includes the Opera House. So there's upgrades to the rigging and the lighting that need to be made that are eligible. They're part of the TIF development program. The public landing restroom replacement project, which coincides with upgrading the chamber building. Those are all projects that we can fund through the TIF. When it comes to financing, so projects that are of the magnitude that we really can't self-fund and we're going to have to finance in some way. That includes upgrades to the public safety building to make it appropriate as a 24-hour facility and to accommodate all the, the new firefighter EMTs that are there. That's going to need to be financed. The town office building HVAC system replacement. So it's really, air conditioning, but also heat pumps instead of just replacing the air conditioning system. And the Public Works Department has 2 plow trucks that are at the end of end of their usable life that need to be replaced. So those are built into the budget. However, we have a few more projects that we want to talk about with you that wouldn't sit in the budget. We would ask voters to approve separately. But before we do any of that, we want to consult the budget committee and then, the select board being the body that's responsible for the warrant would make the ultimate decision about putting those on the warrant. So does anybody have any questions about
Mark
this
has a
list?
question, then I have a question, then I can go from there.
Well, I have a couple questions about the things that were the department had put in, but are not on the thing. One is the buying out the solar farm.
Mhm.
And I was involved. Now that buyout will actually save us a lot of money. But
Not if we have to finance it, though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the,
Will you do a buyout later on down the road? Is that?
my hope is that next year it
Okay.
might be more practical
Okay.
to look at it.
Because I do know that eventually, when the town buys it, it will save us a bunch of money, but I understand that. You also have engine 5 replacement fire truck was taken out of the,
Yes, so that's one of the ones that we'll talk about. I'll explain kind of the situation with that and get your guidance on it, because I don't think building it into the budget this year, but asking for authorization to borrow for it this year is appropriate. And I'll explain why we came to that.
okay,
Yeah,
those
I mean,
those are my 2 questions.
Yeah, I mean, because in similar vein to Mark, I mean, even thinking about the cruisers and the longevity of something like the trucks, like, isn't it, I mean, having a fund or being able to feed into it versus it being like one lump sum, that hits the budget. I mean, has it ever been handled differently where, in X number of years, a fund can be built and then used for those replacements?
Absolutely. I think when things were cheaper, it was practical to do that. So I'll actually skip ahead because of the questions. So we were going to propose that we ask for authorization at town meeting to borrow for engine 5. And the reason we're asking for this is there is no upfront cost from the day that you put in the order, and it takes about 2 years before they're ready to be delivered. And so it would be, if we got authorization from voters this June, we could put in an order this year. It wouldn't be available until FY27, so we could do the borrowing for it, engine 5 in FY27, and then our first debt service payment wouldn't come online until FY28. So that was sort of the idea of, looking ahead and planning ahead for engine 5, is that, there's almost no sense in even building it into the budget this year, because there's going to be no impact on taxpayers, even if everybody was like as supportive as possible until FY28. So the thought was, even though it's not showing up in the budget, we're still asking for authorization from voters this year to purchase it.
I just have a quick, so do they lock in on what they're saying the cost of that engine is going to be, even if it's being built 2 years later? just asking for tariff reasons. Just-
Yeah, good question.
It is a good question. I just spent yesterday and today, I came back early from the Maine Fire Chiefs Conference to be here, and had that conversation with numerous manufacturers because of the tariffs. But it depends on where the raw materials come from in terms of cost. But once we sign a contract, that locks in the price. But there's a lot
Whatever
of,
we're
there,
locking
there,
in for.
there are currently a lot of variables in terms of prices.
Right.
Yeah.
The ones we're locked in contractually, then they are obliged to it. Okay, Mark. Go ahead.
My question, how long has Engine 5 been in service?
1995, so 30 years.
95. So it seems expensive, but they last a long time. How much would you expect the next same life for the next engine to replace it?
Hopefully in the 30-year range. If
Great.
we're speccing it out so that, the materials that it's built with and the way that it will get treated will hopefully have that same.
That perspective is important.
Versus like a gently used. I mean, is there a market for like low mileage engines?
You typically are purchasing somebody else's problem because typically a fire department will hold on to it for, the 25 to 30 year life. So if you're buying something that's in the 10-year range,
Yeah.
I'd worry about it.
Okay. Duncan, you have a question online?
Yeah, is there any way we can, or any value that we can recoup from the existing engine, or maybe it's, due to depreciation and accounting, I don't know, maybe we have to not recoup any value? I don't know. I just wanted to know if there was anything we could get.
There would be some value. I don't know what it would be. I mean, it's not going to be significant. in
Couldn't
term-
you try and sell your problem?
Make sure the mic's close so everyone can benefit from it.
I think they heard it.
Yeah, I'm just talking online, yeah.
Mountainside in the market?
No, we're trying to get rid of the second. Maybe we could make it two for you.
Deb, you have a question online?
Well, do we have to have an amount to get authorization from the voters to lock it in?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I mean, we have an amount at this point in time. I think what we would do, given everything that's going on that we've heard about, is we'd probably increase the amount that we have in the budget book by about 25%.
So what's the ask of us today? And then Matthew, I see you have your hand up next.
So it would be, what you'd be actually voting on is the CIP in the book, and then making a recommendation to the select board on, and it's not just the fire truck. Jeff has stuff too that he wants to get your advice on. So recommendations on putting those questions in terms of the fire truck and what Jeff is going to explain to you on the ballot as separate questions.
Okay, Matt, you had your hand up?
Yeah, this is gonna sound silly, but I'm asking it honestly, okay? $1 million seems like a lot, but also reasonable, right? Like for whatever, like I have no real frame of reference for what it costs to buy a fire truck today. Do we get like the sweetest fire truck? Does it have the big engine and leather trim, like, or not? Like how much to get the best fire truck?
You're saying,
Or is
is it the high, middle?
like,
Yeah, you want
where-
high end?
where-
How many
well, yeah, where is
hoses? How much
this?
life safety equipment? Yeah.
Yeah, like where is this in the range of potential fire engines we could get?
Again, there's a whole bunch of variables, but the one in particular we're looking at, we're probably mid-range.
And I would say engine 5 is your primary responding.
Well, what we typically do is it's the second engine right now because we put the newest one in service frontline so that it gets the wear and tear in its first 10 to 15 years. And then after 10 to 15 years, they go into the second place.
So
And then it's our, and
Important
it's
in
our
the
mutual aid
rotation,
truck.
but mid-range.
Okay, so do you
So
want
how
to,
much to get the, like, is it worth it to, it's, I guess this is my question. In this moment where we're gonna vote on essentially a budget to approve, to send to select board, to send potentially to voters to approve, to go buy a fire engine, I just wanna make sure you got as much money as you could possibly want here. So if there's anything else you need on fire truck, ask for it now, because if it's a difference of $100,000 or $50,000 or $25,000, if we're spending $1 million on a fire truck, I mean, let's buy a sweet fire truck,
I appreciate that. The difference is probably several $100,000 and between mid-range and,
All right, well, if that's the jump, then I think I'm good at mid-range then. Like I didn't know if it was a negligible difference to go up to get what you need, or if it was like a magnitude, up. And if you're telling us that we're good here. Then
yeah, I appreciate that. The thing is, a fire engine is pretty much, it's a custom-made vehicle, and we could put all kinds of bells and whistles on it and get the price way up there, but that's bells and whistles that don't get used and aren't really productive for the amount of money that you're spending. And we've been chatting with manufacturers for probably 3 years now, and I think we're mid-range, and I think that's good.
Margaret, go ahead.
And
Oh, go ahead.
and then I'll stop here.
Yeah.
I apologize. The reason I'm harping on this here is because going back to the police budget, when we did the police, fire, and EMS budget at the beginning, I'm always amazed that we seem to lose officers or fire people or certain equipment over dollars an hour, single dollars an hour, or tens of thousands of dollars of equipment. And so I just, as we sit here and contemplate $1 million for a fire truck, I wonder, how do we allocate potentially budget, if it's possible, to cover some of those holes in addition to what we're doing here?
Margaret, go ahead, and then Mark.
I was just thinking, if you're going mid-range, does that vehicle that you have selected with the additions that it's elected, does it perform everything you feel that the safety of the town of Camden requires?
Yeah, so it's not just me, right? There's about six people in the fire department involved and looking at the various different apparatus. So yes, we're happy.
So it meets your needs?
Yes.
Mark, do you have a question?
So I can't resist. So what you're saying is you're eliminating the massage seats and the personal movie screens for each of the firemen. It's
No, those are important.
Sorry, couldn't
There is not a
resist.
coffee maker on it, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, and I know we have a lot to cover. So again, but Matt, just to circle back to your last comment, I'll put my spouse of firefighter hat back on. I think getting the 24-hour schedule and that and the station outfitted to properly house the firefighters so that they can start doing those shifts is a pretty significant leap in, longevity and firefighter satisfaction. Again, not doing it myself, but living with one. So,
All right, so I'll do the introduction to the next one, which is upgrades out at the Snow Bowl. So we've talked about this a few times publicly, but for those who aren't aware, the window wall or the gable end wall, which is the correct terminology for it, is 30-plus-year-old feature of the Snow Bowl, and it's really getting to the point where it's pretty dangerous. We told the YMCA that we really couldn't host summer camp out there because there's sections there where you can put your fingers through the casing. So there's just a real concern that it's not safe. We were able to make some stabilizations to the wall to get through the season out there, but it really is something that needs attention and needs attention this year. And we're concerned that if we don't address it, that we're going to have to figure out something. It's a real liability, and it will render the lodge unusable if we don't do something about it quickly. We're working as fast as we can to try to, figure out what the cost is going to be for it. At this stage, we only have kind of high level estimates, but it's looking like it'll be about $350,000, could be more than that, could be less. However, that's the best estimate we have at this point in time, given the work that still needs to be done to plan that project. So that's another one that it really is, do we want the Snow Bowl to continue to be operational? Because if we do that, that needs to be fixed. Jeff, do you have anything to add to any of that?
In the spirit of time, I'll try to be quick about it. So some things we've learned, that some of the panes are not tempered glass. So when you think about the fact that you have some rotten sills that we've made safe temporarily by stabilizing them, but non-tempered glass where people can get to it is really not ideal in this type of environment. So on Tuesday, I go to the select board with a proposal from a local architectural firm about actually putting the plan together to replace both the window wall, and if it's okay to, to replace the temporary trailer that is next to it, also 30 plus years old. That's the building we've been doing rentals and ticketing and ski school out of. It's unsafe. I don't know how else to describe it more clearly. The floor is rotten. We've had to replace boards because people have put a foot through the floor while working in there. The ceiling leaks. It's time for that building to go. We also, on January 21st of this year, there was an ADA assessment that was reported to the select board. I don't know if anybody had an opportunity to see that, but it really talked about a lot of the inaccessibility or accessibility challenges that we have at the Snow Bowl. In the same meeting, I presented to the select board the concept of when we do replace that trailer, that this is, really our opportunity to make the lodge, the existing lodge, much more accessible. The way to do that is, if you've been over there, you enter the existing lodge at ground level. Once you get in there, you can go to the bathrooms, but if you're in a wheelchair, you're not getting upstairs. You're going back outside and you're making your way the best you can up to the second floor. Putting a ramp in is problematic. Ramps need to be maintained all winter. They have to be kept clear. And a ramp requires, for every foot of height elevation, 12 feet of length. So we'd be talking about, for that 10 feet rise, putting a ramp 120 feet into the parking lot or snaking it around, which is really impractical. So the recommendation that I made to the select board was for us to look at a proposal that would allow us to essentially replace the trailer with a building that also has an entrance at ground level that somebody would be able to roll into, and to include in that building an elevator and an ADA specific bathroom, so that, for the first time in the history of the Snow Bowl, we would have the ability to have people that are wheelchair bound equal access to the lodge. Naturally, a plan like this, we're talking about elevators, you're talking about multiple stories. It would be significantly more expensive than throwing another, trailer on that same spot and considering to use it. But I really look at this. We're going to do this once. We're going to replace this building once, and my position on it is, let's do this. Let's allow this to be a place that more people in our community can access, particularly because we're talking about expanding seasonal activities beyond winter months to make it, really a 4-season destination for healthy outdoor activities. I hate to think that we continue to potentially exclude people from our community because of accessibility.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great to hear that. And even on those off seasons, I mean, we were there for a watershed graduation, like grandparents that are trying to, even access at that point, that back porch, it just makes it really limiting to get there. I was going to just put a small plug in for those windows as a migraine sufferer, that if they are replaced with windows, that's something that maybe reflects some of the sun and less glare because I'm always facing backwards with sunglasses on. Anyway, it's just. It's
100% on the same
it's-
page with
It's
that
a
one.
great window, but I'm it's always just like,
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to see in there. So any comments or questions or,
I
I-
guess, what are we voting on?
oh, go ahead.
Are we voting on something now or are there other projects?
So voting on
And
the,
Deb, I'll get to your question in just a sec. 'cause I saw
yeah,
your hand
voting
up.
on the CIP. So the projects on this list that are on, sorry, I don't know which tab they're on, tab or page,
Page 32.
page 32.
Yeah.
So that's what we're asking you to vote on. And then if you could provide a recommendation to the select board on
The fire.
Engine 5 as well as the Snowball
Okay.
Lodge projects.
Deb, you had your hand up though, so when I,
So a question again about the Ragged Mountain Foundation. Do they have any money that they're willing to put into the lodge? They were hoping to build a new lodge, but that's kind of, sort of pie in the sky at this point. Are they willing to help restore the current lodge?
Yeah, I've had several conversations with the Ragged Mountain Recreation Area Foundation, primarily focused on, the really potential for a new lodge down the road. I have not broached the subject with them at this point on helping out with this project, and really not in a place to talk about what money they would or would not have for this, but something I've thought about and something I certainly intend to have conversations with them about.
Okay, I think that would be really helpful.
Agreed. Thank you.
any other questions and? Okay.
Did anyone have any questions about the library numbers that I've shared?
Oh, yes, good point. Before you move forward,
Yeah.
increasing the, or amending the library request.
Do you mind just taking us through
Yeah,
for just a minute? 'Cause I
sure,
think we got
absolutely.
these
So,
passed out late.
So especially the folks who are online, I don't know, you may have received just the really simple breakdown of the capital request from the library, but I have additional materials that I can share with you, which are quotes, and then also the findings of the historic engineer that we hired through the library. So relating to storm damage from the January storms, the library had, we incurred water damage and through the roof, which there was damage to the flashing, damage to some portions of the mortar, and we had water that came through the ceiling of the library. So if you come into the historic library or historic reading room area, you can see the paint peeling away in those particular areas. So in order for us to get the roof fixed, the roofer has said that we need to have work done first on the masonry of the library, because I guess that's the order that you go in. I'm learning all these things. And the FEMA is balking at paying specifically for the repointing, but also they've mentioned in the email today, they're possibly balking on replacing the flashing, which had been on the table from the get-go. It was the first thing we had talked about. So even in the last week, it's become significantly harder to work with the person who is our point person. So the quotes are from the mason to repoint all four walls of the historic building. It's $423,000. The paint repair, he's really just going to spot fix. He doesn't have to repaint the entire ceiling of the library. So it's $1,500. And then the roofing would fix the flashing, and it would take care of the temporary fix. There were some slates that were removed when the temporary fix was put in. He would replace any missing slates as well. And so that's $27,388. So it's a total of $451,888. This obviously would mean that carpeting would not happen this year unless the group decided to increase it even more. But at the very minimum, this is very much in question, and we had anticipated, obviously having 3/4 of it paid for, and now it's very much up in the air. So,
Okay, so I just want to make sure you good. You okay? I know. I just want to make sure we're crystal clear. So what the revised proposal is not anything that we have voted on previously. It's just an addendum to what, I'm just orienting because we went
Yeah,
fire
so-
truck, snowball, and I'm appreciating you going through it, but
sure.
Yes, so for the library, you might want to go back and consider the library budget to account for an additional at least $300,000 to cover the expense that Christie's talking about. And so what we would do on the revenue side is, because that would be, way too much to self-fund, we would increase the proposed borrowing to be to 450,000 to cover that project.
So how would we, should we do the first part first and then come to the library,
Yeah, I would,
yeah.
then I'd like to make a proposal. We, okay, the capital improvements, equipment, facilities, infrastructure, debt capital contingency for $2,617,000. And at the same time, we also recommend to the select board the improvements at the Snowball and replacement of Fire Truck 5.
Do you need a dollar amount for what the recommendations are?
if you could put in the dollar, amount. I think you
Sure.
typically do
Those-
that.
Those dollar amounts for the, I don't have a number here for the.
Oh, no, you don't need for the fire
For
truck.
fire
or
truck and
the-
snowballs? what
No,
I'm
no,
asking.
because that's more of an advisory.
Okay,
So it's just the 2,617,000 and then the two recommendations.
do I have is there a second?
I would like to second it, but I'm confused.
Okay, unmute yourself and then you can second and but.
Okay, I would like to second, but.
Yes.
Now, this money for the library was originally money that you felt FEMA was going to reimburse. And now you're not sure if FEMA is going to be reimbursed, but they might.
So Margaret, just so we're not doing the library part yet. We're
Yeah,
just doing,
okay.
yeah,
No,
we
all right,
decided
so-
we're going to take that out so we can
Okay, then all
actually
right, in that case, that I
second it with no but. Okay. Any, yeah. Any questions or discussion?
Audra, I have a question.
That's Jody.
On my side of the budget, under the town manager, it includes the 150,000 for the snowball window wall. Do you want that included in the motion?
No.
Okay.
Huh? No, it won't be. And we're going to
So
pull
Jody,
it
you're
out
saying, but
anyway.
you're saying it's not included in the total that Mark just put on the floor?
It is, so we
Oh.
can subtract 150,000.
Oh,
So,
it is?
yeah, Mark's motion, it did not include the 150, so his
Oh,
motion.
okay.
Okay.
No, it's
2
not.
It does
million.
not, okay,
Yeah,
just
some-
double checking. Okay, so any other discussion, or I see Duncan, your hand is up, go ahead.
And just regarding the snowball, it's just the window wall portion of the building that we're talking about this moment, correct?
But that's part of the recommendation to the select board. That's not part of this number.
Okay, but we're not talking about the new building with the elevator and all of the other things that were mentioned.
Not fiscally,
That's far down the road.
yeah,
Okay.
Yes.
yeah, fiscally, that's not included, just that we would have a recommendation that it be looked at, correct?
We're recommending that the select board take that up
Yeah.
along with the fire truck.
Okay.
Mark, do you be willing to restate the motion?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, I would recommend that we approve the capital improvements, equipment, facilities, infrastructure contingency for $2,617,000, and also recommend to the select board that they look at the fire truck replacement of engine 5 and the window wall in the new building at the Snowball. those are recommendations to the select board from us.
Margaret, do you still second that same motion? That, yeah,
Yeah,
but that-
that I will, yeah.
Yeah,
That I
okay.
will second.
any other discussion or before we go to vote or clarification? Okay, all in favor? I see Matt, I see Deb, let's see. I think we are, and anybody opposed? Okay, Barb, anybody abstaining? Because I didn't see. Deb did, but yeah, Barb, can you just confirm how? You're on mute.
She was hidden behind the thing.
Was it? I just want to make sure. Okay, well, either way, yeah, so it passes. Okay. Thank you for those. And then, okay.
Okay, so to clarify a little bit more about the process with FEMA. So 2 weeks ago, we submitted to them these quotes, and they told us, so we have this project for the building. We also have a project for the seawall. The seawall came in at a reasonable amount. We're going to move forward with that. The building, with these quotes provided, they came back and said that they would pay for $17,000. And we rejected that amount and said, try it again, and provided additional information for them, everything they asked for. They came back earlier this week or 2 days ago and said, here are 10 more things that we need you to give us, which are things we've already given them. They said, you haven't provided any cost analysis for us. We provided these identical quotes to them. So it's getting progressively difficult or more difficult to work with them. And I really, Audra and I were just saying the other day, it's going to be fighting for every single penny, I think, from here on out. So if it comes through, if they were to pay for 3/4 of what we're proposing here, then we would only be on the hook for about $150,000. But if the money is approved, Audra and I had also said that there are other needs that the library has, that we could certainly put some, the library has had leaks in particular areas ever since the addition, the underground addition has opened. So for 30 years, we've been dealing with leaks. I've had a leak in my office 5 times, like giant water puddles in the office 5 times since I started. It smells like formaldehyde. So we've talked about how we would need to take out the sheetrock and identify where the leak is coming from, but then you're dealing with the green roof is right over the top. So what is the cause of that? So there are other structural issues. This is obviously immediately important. I mean, we have important pieces of artwork in that building and the historical building. We have, rare books. Those need to be protected. And so the repointing is of utmost importance to us. Obviously, those things that have been lingering for 30 years, I would also love to tackle those as well. So we would absolutely put the money to good use, or maybe not even use all of it. And so we had talked about, maybe we wouldn't need to borrow quite as much or use as much if FEMA does actually come through, but it's certainly not looking good.
So first of all, I'm sorry that it's such a struggle.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, unfortunately,
Yes.
it's just, yeah.
Was
Anyway.
there an initial letter from FEMA of commitment of any kind?
Chris, what would you say?
You gotta put your mic on if you're gonna say something.
Well, they didn't give a commitment. They give you some feedback that says we could do this, but
Right. Yeah, like a general idea of this is how much this project could cost. And our previous point of contact, when it was with sort of the federal FEMA group, she had made it sound like, well, it's less than $1 million and probably over $500,000 based on what we're looking at for both projects. And it according to what the historical engineer and an independent building inspector had looked at. When they looked at the damage, they agreed with the quotes that were given by the vendors. So yeah.
Is our congressional delegation involved at all?
I have reached out to them to let them know that that the fact that the funding is in question is tied to a library that they clearly care about. They were there when it became a National Historic Monument. And I asked them to give me a call back, but I haven't heard anything yet. So
I have one question, and then Mark, I know you do. So given how the library is typically funded, which is kind of split between town, is this reflecting half of what the total amount would need to be to bridge what FEMA isn't doing, or is this the entirety of it?
So this would be the entirety of what, of the project based on the quotes. The library has already paid for the historic architect and the engineer and the landscape architect who's drawn up an initial sketch for Harbor Park. So the way that FEMA works is they basically just write you a big check at the end.
Right.
And the library has been, we paid for the temporary repairs to Harbor Park that happened right at the, when we restacked the blocks and things like that. And then we paid for half of the temporary repair with the initial roofer who we employed, and we're in litigation to get some of that back because the work was not done to her satisfaction and jeopardized all of the FEMA funding. So, so the library has put out probably, I'd have to calculate, but it's probably close to maybe 60,000 initially. And then there's also the question of this is the building specifically, and the building's owned by the town. So that makes it kind of,
Yeah, the
tricky,
library,
right?
they're
Yeah.
not in a position where they can borrow money like the town can.
Yeah, I was just trying to just reconcile, 'cause I know we kind of
Yeah.
go through it like it's 50 here, 50 there.
Right.
Where's the line of that? Go ahead, Mark.
So I'd like to say, so we need to vote on this. This is not a recommendation. This is a vote for this amount, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I would like to make a motion that we approve the $451,888 for the library. And at the same time, remind people that the library is iconic in this town. And number two, unlike other towns, they always put in over $500,000 that they raise privately that don't come from public funds. So this is, a really good time for us to thank them for the millions of dollars they've saved the town over the years and step in when they really need it.
Thank you, Mark.
But Mark, could we add something about?
We can do a if there, we can, if I want to see it, we can ask if there's a second, and then I'm with
And
you,
then-
Deb, because I have some other kind of
Sure.
potential. So is there a second for the,
Yeah, I second Mark's motion. I don't think FEMA is going to come up with money. I think the library needs what it needs to be structurally sound and be operational for the town. So I second his motion.
so let's open it to discussion. So Deb, go ahead.
Well, I was just wondering if we could add to the recommendation, something contingent upon FEMA funding or not.
Yeah, I was in the same thought process of that it's not assumed unless there's,
But won't the contractors need to get paid? Like, isn't it a cash flows issue then?
Yeah, I mean, it's a reimbursement program, so
Yeah.
yeah. There probably would be some level of borrowing, even if it was anticipation of reimbursement.
Yeah, so. Or we could just fund it, pay the contractors, get it done, and if the FEMA money comes, the FEMA money comes, and that's bonus. Is that what we're saying here? They can pay it back? Or the library can use it? Is it restricted funds? Like, what's the deal with that?
Yeah, it's more of the authorization, approving it in the budget, and then on the revenue side, we'll ask you to increase the the revenue to reflect the borrowing that we're going to need to do for this project.
So in the budget that was approved, I think it was that was the week I wasn't here on the 20th. So you have a capital improvement, which was, there was a $150,000 line item.
Replacing that with the 450.
So is it 450 plus the 150?
No.
Or is it 450 instead of the 150? So the difference
450
of,
instead.
Oh, that's good to know.
okay, so it's essentially, and then Jody, I'm staring at your cube.
So it's 300,000.
Yeah, approximately, yeah. 300,000 in addition for not 150 plus 450.
Yeah, and keep in mind as well, like these are quotes, so we might want to give a little buffer.
The the Knowles quote, we were initially quoted, I think back in, let's see, he mentions, so back in October, I think the quote was 400,000. So even since then, it's gone up $25,000.
Duncan, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering if this additional 300,000, if that would be earmarked kind of for the library in that if FEMA does cover it, it would still have to be used for a library purpose, or whether it would roll back into kind of a general capital improvements fund, or we can reallocate it according to how we like.
So if it's approved by voters, it would have to be used for the library. Because we're specifically putting it out to them as library capital
Yeah,
improvements.
I mean, Mark has a question, and I have a general
Well,
FEMA, what are we
I
doing?
was going to
question.
clarify about if FEMA does,
Yeah.
Christy mentioned if FEMA does give us some of the money back, there are some really essential, repairs that need to be done, which would be nice if we get those done as well. So I think we, vote for the 451,888 to the library because they're in desperate need. And it's important for them to get the funds. And then hopefully if FEMA comes in, think of it as FEMA helping to repair some of the other things at the library.
Yeah, I guess my broader question is, I don't know the number of like how many FEMA contingent grants and, capital improvement projects span all of Camden. And it would just be really helpful knowing that there's potentially, it's questionable what is and is not going to come through if there needs to be beyond the library, another consideration of like, what is the potential risk that Camden is facing based on FEMA falling through? And based on that, is there a more generalized, fund that needs
Yeah.
to be approved upon and thought of? And then as things do and do not come through, they're not necessarily, I'm all about earmarking for the public library, but what else is it, versus like just trying to play catch up as things come through. So do you have a sense of what that total risk is based on FEMA, not promises, but could be?
We're constantly fighting with FEMA. It's a constant back and forth. So kind of the way that we're managing a lot of this is that if it's something that we don't get reimbursed for, or we get worn down on to the point where like, is it even cost effective to keep going back and forth with them on it? Because this is very clearly like a huge project and a huge need, and there's not really a great alternative. Like the Lake Beach shoreline stabilization, that's a perfect example of a project where we've just scaled down what we're planning on doing because we just don't know what we can rely on from FEMA. So it really depends on what the project is as to, what we're going to, what kind of contingencies we have and what kind of flexibility we have to either do something else or look for, look to another financial year to fund it. So I'd say out of the totality of, FEMA related projects that we have going on and that we're looking for reimbursement for, this is really one where there's not a great alternative.
Yeah, and again, I'm just trying to be mindful as for the voter of like, and again, because I know on the initial vote of 115, and again, I know there's additional projects and things that would be great to have, and it is, like I said, an icon of this community, but I also just want to be mindful of like what is being reflected here is specific to what the FEMA requirements and reimbursements were versus this, plus it'd be great if we can also get this, and this done while we're doing it. I just want to be mindful of separating those out because it is, I'm assuming that what was reflected in here is what was anticipated or hoped could be done should FEMA come through. So I just want to make that distinction between other.
I'm sorry, I have one more thing to add. I have a friend that's a roofer that does historical restoration, and he was aware of the library situation. He told me at the end of last year, he says, if this doesn't get fixed, it could be catastrophic. And so I'm aware of that, and I know that, and I believe it should be fixed. On the other hand, I don't care about carpets. If carpet's dirty, I don't care. That's not, I don't figure that's essential. I think it's fine that you're not doing the carpets. Let's fix what needs to be fixed that saves our building. And then some of the cosmetic things later down the line can be done at another time.
Yeah, I just in the conversation, I just wanted to make sure there's a distinction of what's been baked in here is specific to what you were relying on FEMA to help with with
Absolutely.
the replacement versus additional upgrades.
Yes, yeah, these were all related to, so it's all for upstairs fixes. It has
Yeah.
nothing to do with kind of the underground, the green roof, anything in my office. It's none of that. This is all the historic building related to that water damage, and what FEMA, the historic architect and FEMA mitigation said was that in order to mitigate any future disaster, the building must be wind and watertight. And in order for it to be wind and watertight, it must be repointed. And several mitigations of the mitigation staff members have said that, and we're all agreed. Everyone has agreed. And then a week later, we have to do another call and we have to talk about it again. And we had all agreed. Not quite sure where we're misaligned here. So and according to their rules, this should be covered. But I'm
Right.
just
We don't
not seeing it this
Go ahead,
week,
Karen.
So.
I have a question for Audra. Audra, on reserve balances, can any of those be moved into the library for this urgent refit?
Well, the problem is, that those are past balances that were voted on at town meeting by voters.
I'm looking at the reserve balance sheet.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So that money's already been allocated by voters for those purposes.
So it cannot be moved, is that right?
No, it'd have to be spent
That's
on the
unfortunate.
purposes they were originally voted on for.
Are we ready to take a vote?
I just like to say one thing about public messaging around this is that I think it's really important that people hear these are local consequences for FEMA not coming through on its commitments. And if there's a way for the select board to message that, I think that's really important.
And after you vote, I want to talk to you about another really important local consequence for something that's happening. So go ahead and vote and then I'll.
Thank you, Deb.
Yeah, and again, and Deb, to your point, I think that's where I was asking, what is the broader implication so that we're not, stepping our way through kind of what else is at risk, which I don't know, I'm not going to answer today, but are we ready to vote? Okay, do you want to repeat with maybe the addition of it's in replacement of the 150?
I would like to not nominate. My mind just went blank.
Propose?
Make a motion.
Motion is the word I couldn't think of. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the $451,888 for repair of the library, which is replacing the approximately 150 we voted on previously. So it's about a $300,000 add.
Are you willing to add if the FEMA funds don't come through?
It's even if the FEMA funds come through, there's needs at the library. I would just like to leave it that simple. Okay.
Do we have any second? Do we have a second for?
I second. Matt seconds.
So all in favor for as it goes through? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And all opposed, as it stood through, it's not a library, it's more the FEMA. Okay, the motion still it passes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay,
All right, and one thing, just like some of the fresh horror coming out of the federal government, they're talking about cutting or getting rid of tax exempt bonds. Every single thing that we've talked about borrowing for, funded through tax exempt bonds. Any road that's replaced, any sewer pipe, that is, the tax exempt bonds is what makes the world go round, and it builds the infrastructure that you drive your car down, and when you flush your toilet, that is all tax exempt bonds. So borrowing would go up for everyone, state, federal, local, by about 25% if they get rid of that. And they're thinking it's a really great way for them to save about $250 billion, I think. Maybe it was, but anyway, so that I just can't even tell you the impact on everybody everywhere that would have. So if there's ever a time to, wring your Congress person off the hook about something, it's getting rid of tax exempt bonds. Anyway, so if you could please do that, that would be helpful.
Yeah. Let's do a
Well,
time, go ahead, Chris.
And just the question was asked about the congressional delegation, like this was a hot topic at the Fire Chiefs Conference, I can assure you, because this affects every community in Maine. And the congressional delegation is aware of it. And just as an aside, also, we submitted a FEMA grant in February of 2024 for Engine 5's replacement for $950,000. We've received the acknowledgement that they have the grant, but we have heard nothing since March of 2024. So.
Yeah, so let's do a timeline. Where are we at in our journey of budget committee? So, because again, this is all, we knew this, remember, this was going to be our optional meeting that we didn't think we were going to need, but here we are. So we have I want to make sure, because page 33 on the debt capital contingencies, that one still has to be voted on?
Yeah, that's just the contingency.
Okay. But I'm just wondering what we have left.
So you've got all the special revenue funds, and then you have the actual revenue,
Okay,
general fund revenue.
okay. So we are good to move forward to special revenue then? Because we have paid parking listed here, but then you also added snowball and wastewater.
Yeah, so if you could vote on the contingency. So
The
that's
contingencies, okay, so
tab
tab
33.
8, page 33.
Sorry, page 33.
Yeah, just behind page 32. You don't have it. Okay, well now you guys are going to share.
So it's one line, it's
One line.
$50,000.
Okay, let's do this. Oh, only if you're in favor.
Page
Yeah,
33.
I don't have it either.
Told you contingency of 40,000.
Oh, 40.
What say you? I know, Mark needs a break. Who else is willing to make a motion? You have to put your mic on so we can hear you. Thank
I
you.
make a motion, we accept the 40,000 as proposed by the town manager.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Okay, we go to vote. All in favor? 3 hands up. Yep. Okay, it passes unanimously. Great.
All right, so we'll move on to the first special revenue fund, which is wastewater. So before it's up on the slides because these are all advisory votes. And so what I think is important when we get into the special revenue funds, there's really sort of a methodology around how you can pay for certain services. It could be fee-based or it can be plowed into taxes. And so when we get into looking at all the special revenue funds, that's sort of something that we're looking for your advice and guidance on. So with wastewater, it's set up so that when we present the wastewater budget to the commissioners, which is the select board, the revenues have to cover the expenses of the operations of the wastewater department. Now, there has been some flexibility and some changes in that over time where the operation and maintenance costs are part of the wastewater budget, and that's paid for by the ratepayers. but who's paid the capital improvement, the cost of that has changed over time. So at one point, it was paid for in Camden completely by taxpayers. So taxpayers funded all of the capital upgrades to the wastewater plant and the collection system. That changed dramatically in 2021. Sorry, I might be getting my timeframes wrong, but around 2021, when we wanted to get a low interest loan and grant to do the upgrades to the plant, which we could only be eligible for if it was paid, if the debt service on that was paid through rates. It couldn't be paid through taxes, because the whole idea of that program is to keep rates low. And that's why they subsidized interest rates and grants for that. So over time, and if you look in totality, it was going to save the town a lot of money to get a low interest loan and a grant to do that project. So it made sense for us to change how we funded capital projects, so it put it onto ratepayers. When we're looking at this infrastructure bond that was approved by voters over this past year, we're going to get to a point where it might make sense to start looking at having the taxpayers subsidize some proportion of that. So really, we're just trying to sort of give you an idea of the upcoming capital improvement projects that are primarily going to be sewer replacement projects. So you can sort of be aware of, what's coming down the line, the cost of that, and we can start talking about how we're going to divvy up who pays for what. Taxpayers through the general fund, ratepayers through the wastewater special revenue fund. Now over to Dave and Justin to talk about what they're doing.
So good evening, everyone. And if you're not familiar with who I am, I'm Dave St. Laurent. I'm the Public Works Director and the Wastewater Superintendent. And I have Justin Gove with me over to my left. And we're going to give you Justin's going to start off by giving you a brief overview of the basics of the plant and the work that we have done so far with the bond money and the collection system, which is a majority of our effort right now because we've just done a lot of work with the plant. But then I'll go over the actual budget myself, but I'm going to let Justin take it from here.
Thanks, Dave. I'm Justin Gove. I'm the town engineer. I've only been with the town for probably a little over a year now, but I'm from Camden. We have the responsibility of operating and maintaining the wastewater treatment facility and the associated collection system. The treatment plant was originally constructed in 1969. It's permitted to treat 1.21 million gallons a day. The plant had not seen any significant upgrades since its date of construction until recently, as we've discussed, when we completed a $50 million project that was finished in 2023. That included systems throughout the entire plant. It also included a number of the pump stations in the collection system. The division employs 5 full-time employees, a plant manager operator, 2 additional operators, and 2 mechanics. We have been seeing, since the completion of the upgrade of the plant is running very well. It's in excellent condition, as you'd expect, investing $15 million into it. By and large, the pump stations throughout the collection system are all in excellent condition and functioning as they should, functioning very well. So we're pleased with that, and that has freed up the bandwidth to shift our focus towards the portion of the system most in need. That is the collection system, the gravity collection system primarily. The pipe varies in age, but there's a significant percentage of it that's in failing condition or near failing condition, old clay pipe. With that old clay pipe, as Audra alluded to, we have problems with infiltration and inflow. That's when we get stormwater runoff and groundwater into the collection system. It overwhelms the capacity of the collection system, which results in the periodic discharge of sewage into the harbor. And it also results in high flows at the treatment plant, where we have periodic exceedances of our permitted monthly average flows. So we've been doing a lot of work recently to the deep dive cleaning, inspecting the collection system and trying to understand exactly where our most significant areas of need are, and really, identifying that, but putting it in the context of other infrastructure needs. So condition of the road surface, the pavement, condition of and availability of pedestrian facilities, sidewalks, needs for traffic calming, working with our partners at the Maine Water Company to try and dovetail our projects with their projects when they have the need to replace their water mains. So this matrix that's up on the screen really distills that down. You can see, we've tackling a number of streets right now. This list has been expanding as we've been expanding our inspection, but Lime Rock, Union, Mountain Street, Mechanic Street, Park Street. I will add Washington Street to that list because recently we've been doing a fair bit of sewer inspection on Washington Street, and there's definitely a need for work there as well. Really what this whole matrix is about is trying to get the most bang for the buck as we can for that bond money, trying to leverage matching funds, federal matching funds, DOT state matching funds, primarily with DOT. You can see that there's a couple of reds up there that pop out. Park Street sewer condition, Park Street stormwater condition, Mechanic Street sewer condition. I will note that those reds, those really are examples of failing infrastructure. Those are the projects that we will be pursuing first because there is immediate need for them. Park Street, we had originally hoped to rebuild the streetscape, including the stormwater and the sewer this year. That is likely being pushed off until next year, partly because we're looking at a slightly larger scope of work than we had anticipated, and also largely because Maine Water Company, who we would like to partner with on this, is not able to go to construction till next year for that one because of budgeting reasons. Other projects that are happening right now that we've discussed a little bit, the Mountainside Molyneux Sewer Extension project that has been designed is currently out to bid. We have a bid opening for that on April 15th. Fingers crossed that we get some good numbers on that. The John Street Sewer Extension project, that is a project in partnership with DOT, who is constructing a sidewalk. And we expect that's still working its way through DOT's right-of-way process, but we're hoping that that will go out to bid this coming winter for construction in 2026, next year. So that's really kind of it in a nutshell. We are in the fortunate position, very fortunate position of the treatment plant and the pump stations, having had a lot of money invested in them, and they're in great shape. And as I said, really what we're looking at hardest right now is trying to address the aging sewer collection system. Just checking through my notes real quick here to make sure I haven't missed anything. There's already been plenty of discussion about the funding for that work. That's primarily through the bond that was passed by voters in June. That's in a nutshell. Happy to answer any questions about that, but otherwise I'm going to turn it over to Dave to get into the nuts and bolts of changes to the operational budget.
Any questions?
Always, there's always questions. Yeah, the one question I have to know, you're going to get into the more of the specifics, but building on that FEMA conversation, is there prioritization like already taking place of, again, not of what potentially could be started or needs to be started without there being, simultaneous or parallel projects where funding might fall through, or is that already being factored in?
Well, I'll say that the John Street project is already, the funding's been appropriated, and that we have no anticipation of any hiccups with that. I mean, things are changing quickly, but we expect that that'll continue as planned. Other opportunities, really, we would be looking at the state roads like Mountain Street, Union Street. We've been in conversations with DOT about that. There's certainly a desire on their part to do those projects, but no funding's been appropriated for any of that yet. So we have, anecdotally, we've heard that DOT has been reducing the amount of work that they're anticipating putting out in this coming next bid cycle. I expect, like all federally sourced funding, this will continue to be a challenge for us. And I can't really say much more than that.
And Duncan, you have a question online?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, you mentioned mostly that, or that there was some gravity fed, and I presume the rest is a vacuum line. Are these repairs to these lines going to be just repairs, or are they going to be upgrades, kind of changing the gravity fed system to an alternate system of some type?
It's going to be a mix. There are cases where we can do in situ rehabilitation, in place rehabilitation. It's possible to line gravity pipes. You basically make a pipe inside the pipe. That's attractive because it allows us to rehabilitate the sewer without tearing up the roadway. But many of these projects, there's needs beyond the sewer pipe. So we're looking at more wholesale streetscape reconstruction. And I'll also note that, a big driver for the replacement of these sewers or mitigation of, these aging sewers, one, it's failing infrastructure, but two, those pipes are a primary source of I&I coming to the system. And we've found that the most effective way to get that I&I out is a more wholesale tear up the road and reconstruct it, because then we can get to, leaking laterals. It gives us an opportunity to really address other stormwater issues. So lining is a tool in the toolbox that we will be using, though we'll be using it in places where it makes the most sense.
So I'd like to also say that we're being very careful with the bond money that we just received, because, it sounds like it's a lot, but it really isn't when you start doing this work. So we want to have a really good look at the entire system. And what we do is we go out and camera the system and we document the defects and the things that we find. And we want to get the best bang for our buck, like Justin said, because we're really trying to get water out of the system, because that water in that system is what costs us a lot of money in the long run, and it pollutes the environment. So we're really going to shoot for the things that are the worst. And that's why we're using this systematic way of doing it, so that it's not just throwing a dart and saying, we're going to go after that one. We're going to go after the ones that are causing the most problems, which kind of makes sense, but it's a little more complicated than it sounds.
And I'll just last thing on this, I'll chime in. I think we all hate to see a municipality come through and pave a road, and then 2 years later they tear it up because there was a water main break, or there was a stormwater need, or there was a sewer need. So we're really trying to identify all of the issues and resolve them in one fell swoop. So we get in, we get the work done, we pave it, and we're out.
Yeah. So if you look at the matrix that we did here, that's why all of these things have some form of weight. All the different categories: stormwater, sewer, stormwater, multimodal needs, drinking water, road surface, traffic calming, shade tree, matching funds. So they're all given a number. And then when you do a data sort on them, it's gonna, the ones with the greatest need, and it may not just be sewer, it may be a collective, will rise to the top, and those will be the ones that we go after.
Duncan, you had a question online?
Yeah, just on that point that you just mentioned, or that one of the gentlemen just mentioned, are we kind of prioritizing sewer lines and similar infrastructure works in accordance with, other, adjacent road work with that needs to be replaced, and trying to, instead of trying to piecemeal and, are we doing anything to kind of do those projects simultaneously to avoid having to rip up, new roads if there is other aging infrastructure running underneath them?
Yeah, you're 100% correct. That's what this whole matrix is about. It's about looking at all the needs. We don't want to just dig the road up if there's just a sewer problem. We want to dig the road up if there's a sewer problem, with a surface problem, with a stormwater problem. We don't want to go in, as Justin said, dig a road up and find out that the main water company. See, we could have done Park Street this year, and we chose to say, okay, the water company has an aging water system on Park Street, so we're waiting a year so that they can get their funding in line, so they can bid with us, so that when we rip that whole road up, a new water line is in there as well as a new sewer line. Because if you don't do that, we put all our stuff in, and then they come by, they don't do their water line, they'll be digging that road up. Once you break open a road after it's all been paved, it doesn't last as long. So that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you.
So Audra, what are we, what is the, I mean, because I know we're covering 3, so go ahead.
Yeah, this is really more educational and overview
Okay.
because the wastewater commissioners who are the select board actually do the voting on it. I really just want to kind of go over the budget as
Yeah.
an overview.
Yeah, you got it.
And Justin did all the hard work explaining all that, and he did a great job. This wastewater budget is a pretty flat budget. It's a pretty flat budget with an 8% increase in it, believe it or let me get my numbers here, 8.45% increase. And the reason why is because we had some small increases in our IT category and some pump station maintenance and facility maintenance, but it's really the debt service that we're paying on the upgrade to the treatment plant, as well as a reserve fund that we have to establish for the ban, for the collection system bond that we just passed. And those are what are actually driving this number up as much as it is. So I can get into the details of this a little bit more, but for the sake of time, I don't think it's probably worth it. Because it's really, I mean, this is a really simple budget. But it has a lot of money in some places that are from debt that we've had to take on to make, clean water is expensive. That's what it boils down to, in a clean environment.
So really it's
Just
really, I
wanted
think,
feedback or questions. that would-
feedback and also preparing everybody for figuring out, over time, as more of this debt service comes online, how we split up, how that's paid for between general fund and wastewater.
So sometimes I kind of wonder if I should, do this part or not, but I think it's worth putting this into layman's terms. So that 8.5% increase, when you quantify that, you get a bill, it's based on your water usage a lot of times, unless you have a well. And they always put on the bill, it's this would be $11.80 per 100 cubic feet. There's probably not a lot of people that understand what 100 cubic feet is. So I kind of broke it down. There's 748 gallons roughly in 100 cubic feet. And when you allocate that $11.80, and you break it down into gallons, it's like a 1.5 cent per gallon is what it breaks down to. Just kind of give you a kind of concept of what that is. And then the increase, if you're looking at the increase over last year compared to this year, if you were roughly a 2-family home, you consume about 50 gallons per day, it's about a $14 increase per quarter. That's a 2-person. So a 4-person home, it's roughly a $29 per quarter increase. So that kind of gives you kind of a feel for what that 8% really is, because everybody's like, oh my God, 8%, right? But it's relatively a modest increase for the amount of debt that we incurred to do all of this, but it's good for people to know and understand.
Thank you. Any other? No, it's really helpful. Any questions, or I keep looking over your head because I'm tracking that. I'm tracking the comments and not.
I know, it's like,
You keep wondering,
I thought
I'm
we
like
had this
staring
one-on-one
above- I'm
thing
staring-
going on, but
No,
then
I'm not staring
I was like,
above you.
darn.
I'm tracking behind your head if anyone has a question. Any, no? Okay, well, thank you both
No
very
problem.
much.
Yeah.
So we have Snowball and paid parking, and then we have a final approval of the budget. Are we up? for that?
Revenues and then budget.
Revenues, oh yeah, sorry. Revenues, then budget.
All right. You ready, Jeff?
So-
I'll click through.
Yeah,
I will do my best to be efficient.
yeah.
I want to start briefly with just an overview of the season. I think that's an important place to start. We opened the season on December 14th, which is earlier than we historically open. We partnered with a company called Entabeni. We have a new ticketing system, which is going to enable us to become much more efficient with how we sell tickets. Big factor being, if you bought a pass this year or a ticket this year, you can go right online and never have to interact with the ticketing desk in order to use our services in the future. We also partnered with IndyPass. If you're familiar with the ski industry, you may be familiar with either the Epic Pass or the Icon Pass, which allows you to buy one pass and go to multiple ski areas. IndyPass is really the same concept for small resorts. That brought 350 people to the Snow Bowl who may not have otherwise come to the Snow Bowl this year because of partnering with them. And we certainly anticipate that grows as the program continues to expand. We made it to the summit. We opened to the summit a month earlier than we historically do, which does two things. One, it gets more people to the Snow Bowl because the triple chair is open when that happens. And two, on a revenue side, it allows us to charge full price for our tickets, which we typically don't do until while it's just the bottom half of the mountain that's open. I'm about to expose my bias about my love of the Snow Bowl. One of the things that I really love about the community base at the Snow Bowl is the fourth grade Learn to Ski program. Both my children went through that program. This year we had 340 students from 14 school districts in the area participate and get the opportunity to come to the Snow Bowl and ski and take lessons and have rentals. And what that does is that makes the Snow Bowl accessible to children who wouldn't otherwise likely have that opportunity. And I think that's one of the things that makes the Snow Bowl as special as it is. We had 750 lessons this year, primarily kids taking lessons at the Snow Bowl, and close to 185 participated in our race and freestyle program. What's the big number on this page? 13,000 visitors to the Snow Bowl this year over the 64 days of operation. And what I think is important to note, we are a vacation town, right? We cater to tourists. We cater to people coming in. And the Snow Bowl, when I think about the residual economic impact it has on our community, which doesn't necessarily show up in the numbers, it's apparent in the data we see here. So if we go to the next slide, I'll start to kind of show you why I say that. Each blue dot represents where a visitor came from. We have data on where people came from for 38% of our sales this year. So not an enormous number of it, but this at least gives you that representation of that 38% that we know where they came from. This shows you that concentration, that yellow right in the middle. That's because that's where Camden is and Rockport and the local town, the surrounding community, which you see where the majority of people come from. 84% of the visitors are from Maine, and which tells you 16% are outside of Maine. So more than 2%, excluding U.S. Toboggan National Championships. More than 2,000 are from out of state. To go to the next slide. This just shows you from around the country where they come from. So these are people that are staying somewhere, they're eating somewhere, they're shopping somewhere while they are here in Camden. Can't tell you specifically where, but when you look at all those blue dots that stand around the country in the Northeast corridor, those aren't day trips, right? They are these are people that are staying here and enjoying all the things that Camden has to offer besides the Snow Bowl. It's important we talk about revenue and expenses because that's what really we're here to do. I'm happy to report our revenue exceeded, let's say achieved at this point, what we had set out and we said we would achieve. $1.2 million. I couldn't find historically another year that we had achieved $1.2 million in revenue going back through the data that is available to me. The reality is we didn't achieve our expense target. We exceeded our expense target. So you see the $1.444 million, 116% of our expenses, leaving our delta between or variance between revenue expenses at about $190,000 for the season. $102,000 over in personnel services and $22,000 over in snowmaking. The snowmaking was expected, right? I shared that before the season started that I was going to exceed our $3,000 snowmaking equipment budget. Part of what allowed us to achieve our revenue budget were things I talked about, getting the triple chair open earlier in the season. That was made possible because we rented a booster pump, which allowed us to make snow for the first time at the top of the mountain and the bottom of the mountain at the same time. So despite having the challenges with the pump system, the VFD that I referenced earlier, we were still able to keep 7 snow guns operational at the top of the mountain, which allowed us to make snow. We also rented a fan gun. The unique thing about a fan gun is it has a built-in compressor and it makes more snow than any other gun we have on the mountain. We had 3 of them operational at the Snow Bowl this year. One of them we fixed, one of them was operational to begin with, and one of them we rented. All of that made for better quality skiing, which is, what brought people in this year. Interestingly enough, we had more in day ticket sales than we had in season pass sales. We were only open 50 days last year. I would tell you that probably drove a lot of people to make the decision to not purchase a season pass this year. I think the product we had to offer really is what resulted in us exceeding our day ticket plan by $143,000 this year. So that tells me people wanted to be here. And so when I look at the 25-26 revenue plan, you're going to see there's a 9% increase in revenue and 11% increase in expenses. So I am projecting that the variance, the coming into the season will be $236,000. So, we'll call it $36,000, or $30,000 more than what it is this year. And that leads to, some decisions we have to make. But before we get there, and I think Audrey did a great job teeing this up. I really need your input on this. But I want to talk about where these expense increases are coming from. It's a $50,000 increase in full-time wages. We talked about the increase in the Parks and Rec staffing at the previous budget committee meeting. Those full-time people become part of the Snow Bowl staff for 5 months out of the year. So naturally, that's going to drive up our full-time wages. Also saw a significant increase in health insurance expense as a result of that as well. And there's $31,000 in lift repair and maintenance, primarily for the installation of the previously purchased rope tow at the tubing hill. That's going to be a wonderful addition for anybody who's been at the tubing hill and has been walking up that hill with children potentially. It is an exhausting process when you're dragging your child up that hill in a tube. This makes it more accessible for more people and, quite frankly, a more enjoyable experience. So that's where that increase comes in. Our rentals we need to increase the volume of rental equipment we're replacing this year. And so I asked for an additional $8,000 in rental equipment budget, increasing it from $12,000 to $20,000. And finally, we've talked about the removal of the rental shop and ticketing area. What I am recommending is $50,000 to remove the building that's there. When we remove the last building, it cost us $20,000 to remove that building. And the example here that you have up on the screen, this is a building that something similar to this that we would use for ticketing specifically this year. The new building we put on the property this year, I would use that for rentals and for retail and for ski school. So the building you see in front of us would be 12 by 16. It's a small building. It would be heated. We'd have Wi-Fi in it. We would sell tickets. Where you see the 2 windows and a door, we will have 3 windows there. That's where people will go to buy their tickets. we will use this for summer ticket sales for events as well, because the last thing I want to do is buy something that we're only going to use for one season. And we will also, after this season, be able to use it in Tobogganville for toboggan registration. So it's not something that I see as, really throwaway, but something we will be able to use long-term on the Snowball property. I do want to talk about season pass revenue. The numbers that are on this page, I would describe to you as very much a draft and a placeholder. And it's really more of the concept of what I'd like to do, that I'd like to talk with you about. If you start with the top box, that's the 24-25 season. So that's this past season. And where you see all the way to the right in the bottom, the non-resident rate. So that we have an early bird rate where if you purchase before November 1st, and a normal rate, or a normal season rate, which is if you purchase after November 1st. And that bottom right column is the maximum price we charge for a season pass for this season. So you're a non-resident and you buy after November 1st. If you're an adult, it costs $494. For a youth ticket, it's $448. For a senior or a child, it's $140. And finally, a family pass is $1,561. And then we apply a resident discount. And so you can see Camden to the left of that, and then the percent of discount that's applied for each of those categories. You can also, if you now focus your eyes up above that, you'll see the discount that's applied. If you look at both the far left column and far right column, it's the early bird discount. So you can see there's incredible variation. 35% for an adult Camden resident versus 21% for a non-resident for a family pass. And so there's an incredible amount of variation in there. One of the things that I am proposing that we do going forward is to build some predictability and consistency into how we apply discounts, whether it's early bird or Camden resident discount. And in this, I'm using 15% as a placeholder. We may decide Camden residents, it should be 20% or it should be 50%. I'm more interested in applying some consistency to it, some predictability to it, rather than it necessarily being a 15% discount. But if you look down on the bottom, just to give you a sense of what that would mean, if we were to apply a 15% discount, you'll see it would take the adult season pass change would actually decrease that for a full-time Camden resident from $513 to $510. It would increase the youth pass from $367 to $391, and the senior pass from $86 to $128. And then you see the same thing with the family pass. It would be a 17% change year over year. So the objective here is not to say, should we go with these particular prices? The objective here is to share with you the concept of having a fixed reduction off of the maximum price that we pay for both an early bird rate and for both a resident discount.
I have a quick question. I know we're being mindful of time, but has it ever been done? Because, I mean, I'm just thinking of the 5 towns. Has it ever been done where there's just a season pass that, like, whether you're in Lincolnville or Hope? Like, I'm just curious if like there's potentially more of a family draw for season passes if it was available, maybe just an early bird. I'm just thinking about all the families and all the Learn to Ski and all the groups, if that was something that's ever been attempted where it's not necessarily a Camden benefit, but something that potentially could have more families signing on because, hey, we're all using it, or.
The family pass is available to everybody.
Yeah, I just mean in
Yeah.
terms of the resident discount versus like
Got it.
just a family, rate discount. I just didn't know if that's ever been done.
I think one of the reasons that it has never come up like that is because the Camden residents are the one that pay the taxes to support.
That's right.
Fair.
So, but it's a great segue if we're talking about family passes to the next page. I am convinced that because we have a family pass, more people come to ski at the Snow Bowl. And the reason I say that is if you compare the benefits of a family pass to a 2-adult, 2-youth family, so a family of 4, the impact, if you look at, if you just look at the 2024 numbers for a second, the top line is at the early bird rate. So a family pass for a Camden resident is $896. If they were to purchase those passes individually, 2 adult, 2 youth passes, it would cost them $1,166. So the variance being $270 that they would be charged if we didn't have the family pass. When we look at all of the 2024, 2025 season, the benefit of the family pass itself was $173,000. So when we think about the variance between our revenue and our expense, I think it's important to understand, and I'm not here suggesting we eliminate the family pass. That's not, but I think it's important to understand the benefit of the family pass. Having that out there is $173,000 in really in benefit to people that have the family pass. So if we look at the next page where we get into season pass considerations, the early bird rate, I talked about a 15% reduction in the regular season pass price. And again, placeholder more than anything else. It's really about setting a flat rate rather than having separate rates. But if we were to do that, if we were to stick with that, an adult resident season pass would decrease by $3, and a non-resident would increase by $6. You'd see the largest increase, however, in the senior and child rates because of how deeply discounted that's historically has been. The family pass pricing, one thing to consider here, if we're really looking to offset revenue, is if we were to limit our family pass to 4 members in the household and then essentially add an incremental cost for every member above 4. That's one way that we could potentially increase revenue, but at the same time, we have to understand there would be people that buy family passes today that would be excluded from purchasing passes in the future just because of the expense associated with it. So the other option, if we're really thinking about how do we close that revenue gap without impacting Camden taxpayers, is eliminating the family pass altogether. Again, it is not a recommendation, but simply a consideration to present to you for your consideration. If you look at the left and right boxes on there, it's simply pointing out what the consideration for the comparison to the 24 versus 25 season pass rates. I did put a note on there in Lost Valley, in case you were interested. There's only one other ski area we've identified in Maine that offers a family pass. It's Lost Valley. They have a much bigger, they're open 7 days a week. They have a lot more terrain. This year they charged almost $1,800 for their season pass, and they do charge $140 for every pass above the 2 adults and 2 children in the family. So sake of time, I'm going to keep going here. So the considerations, right? Addressing the variance between the revenue and expenses really requires a decision between 2 options. I don't think a meaningful reduction in expenses here is practical. I think there are safety concerns with reducing expenses. And we could talk about doing that. We'd be talking about eliminating things like lessons, eliminating things like the 4th grade Learn to Ski program. that's how we get to a meaningful reduction in expenses and still operate as a ski area. So provided the town chooses to continue to operate as a ski area, there's really comes down to, and I'll talk about what I think those two options are. But this is from my perspective, a community-based ski area. And I acknowledge my bias, and I will tell you that. When we think about the fourth grade Learn to Ski program, that brings $26,000 worth of benefit when you exclude the wages we pay to the people that in rentals and in ticketing and in ski school, excluding the wages. If they were to pay their own way at a group rate, it was $26,000 worth of benefits. Camden Ski for free, the Wednesday ski for free. If we were to charge for that, that's $13,000 in Camden resident benefit. The Camden resident season pass discount is a $42,000 value. And again, I've mentioned it several times, but there's a $174,000 benefit to the family season pass. So I think it's important to notice that. I went through and downloaded all of the purchases in Entebbe in the system that we have this year. And I looked at what the actual price for those would be and what we actually received in revenue for each of those. And the revenue opportunity was $416,000 in discounts and in paying less than what the full price for things are. There's some noise in that because we charge less money on weekdays for a day ticket than we do on weekends. And there's some invoiced groups that are in there. But let's say there's 50% noise in there, that half of it is noise. There's still, in discounts that we provide as a community-based ski area, it's still $200,000 that is in potential revenue opportunity. And I think it's important to understand that as well, because if we go to the last page, the decision that I'd love your input on it comes down to this. Do we operate as a ski resort and those discounts really go away? Or do we operate as a municipally subsidized asset? If I had to make the decision, I would say operate as a municipally subsidized asset. Because of all of the great things that we offer to Camden residents and to the community. But that's not a decision that I can make. And I would love your input before going to the select board on Tuesday as to how you would advise we proceed.
Go ahead, Mark.
I think municipal is the way to go, because when you just look at the black and white figures like that, you eliminate what you showed at the beginning of the slides of all the people that come from all over the country and contribute to the welfare of the town. And you can't, have one figure and then totally dismiss the other. That's really important. And I've always seen that short-term decisions for short-term profits usually affect and damage long-term ability to survive. I think it would be a disaster to try and make it a profitable enterprise. And it shouldn't be, because it does bring profit to the town. It's in more ways than one. And you always have to accept that and include that.
Barb, go ahead. You're on mute though, so you got to unmute first. Hold on, let's get you. Are you able to unmute her? We're going to try to unmute you from our end. Let's see. No.
I figured
Oh, there you are. Now
Okay.
we hear you. Go ahead.
I just want to say, I think Jeff has been amazing at leading the Snow Bowl and the Parks and Rec. But I also want to say, and my kids participated in Snow Bowl when they were kids, so I can appreciate that. But I also hear from people who think that as a town-owned, having a town-owned ski area, that I think it's great that we have a town-owned ski area. It's great for Camden and Rockport and Lincolnville and Hope and Union and Warren and all these other places. It's great for all of us. But who pays when we don't have a great year like we had this year? Camden pays for it. And I just think we have to consider that. So.
Thanks, Barb. I'd be remiss if I didn't say, first of all, thank you for your kind words as well. My commitment to the town is to continue to find revenue sources and to continue to grow revenue. As we talk about Four Seasons at the Snow Bowl, there are other revenue opportunities, and I am committed to finding those as well.
I agree. I think there's potential there.
Yeah. I'll say one thing quick and then Margaret will get to you. I mean, I think compared to years past on this budget, I feel like, the trajectory of multi-season and what else exists, like, I think it's been clear that is the only way for additional revenue to come in and to accommodate for those. So I'm also in favor of the, it not just being a ski resort, but being a multi-purpose, but it has to actually fit the needs of what a multi-purpose, place would look like. But go ahead, Margaret.
Whether or not it's a municipally supported thing, I mean, if you look back at the history of the Snow Bowl, it's always been municipally supported. I mean, so it's just a matter of, I'm not a skier, so it really doesn't make any difference to me, but I used to love it when I was a kid. But, it's just a matter of how much is the town willing to pay for that?
Right.
It's not whether or not it's municipally supported. It always has been, is, and probably always will be.
And I just want to be mindful. I know, Mark, you've got one more comment, and I just want to know that we got parking, we have revenue, and we have a final vote. I know. I heard the sigh that resonates through all of our souls. So let's.
One quick question. The Tubing Hill came back this year. It's been sort of, and it's something we used extensively with my family years ago for my son's birthday parties. His birthday's in January. And I don't know that a lot of people knew that existed again. So I think some more publicity about that will bring in revenue. I've been to the Tubing Hill Lost Valley in the years when we didn't have one, and they do exceptional business. So I think that is an avenue for more revenue.
So Barb, if you can go back on mute, and then Deb, I'm going to call on you, and then we'll continue on. Go
So
ahead,
just one comment. I definitely believe it's a municipally supported facility, and it's great, and something we should be proud of. Climate change is scary, I think, for everyone, and that's what always comes up. But I do not think we capitalize enough on the Learn to Ski skiers and their families. And I'm wondering if there's a possible discount family pass for any child who participated in the Learn to Ski program if they purchased a family pass before the November 1st or something like that. So maybe comparable to the Camden discount for those children, because that's the generation coming along. They're the ones we're cultivating.
Thank you. It's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
So I guess the reason why this is so important, though, we know that we came out of this season with a $190,000 deficit, and the budget that is in draft stage now, we've got about just under $240,000 gap between projected expenses and revenues. Jeff was kind of showing you where a lot of that comes from, and the sort of identity crisis we have, where there's this expectation that our revenues are going to cover expenses out there. So if we're going into it knowing that we're going to offer all these things and we're not going to be able to do that, they have to be paid for somehow, because those expenses don't go away. So I guess this is where it gets back to the question of, is the general fund going to subsidize the Snow Bowl? Because instead of knowing that we're going to go into the season with a deficit and then asking voters to cover that after the fact, which I think makes people frustrated because it looks like we're not planning ahead, we need to go into the year saying we know that there is going to be this gap. And as a town, we've made the decision to cover it and support it because we want to offer these benefits and discounts. So I guess that's what we're asking the budget committee is, if that's the direction we're going in, we've got to expect that the general fund budget is going to have to reflect that. So that's the decision we're asking the budget committee to grapple with.
Yep. Go ahead, Margaret.
I think that's a far more honest approach.
Yes.
Because if you look at the dollars and percentages, if you want to go back 40 years, it's no more money. It's probably less money that we're putting out there.
Right. We're just
It's not an
proactively.
approach to, oh no, it's not the poor snowball. Look, it's a town asset.
Right. And I don't know anybody who was on the budget committee last year. I put $150,000 operational subsidy in the Parks and Rec budget for the Snow Bowl because of this very reason. So I guess I think now that, Jeff has had the opportunity, better data, better understanding of, what we offer and what it costs versus, kind of the wishful thinking around, okay, well, here's how much it costs us, and we're just going to work really hard to make sure that we cover, these expenses with revenue. I think approaching it more honestly and saying, yes, we want to offer all these things and it has a cost to it, and we're going to, as a town, support that upfront as opposed to kind of pretending and then going and asking voters after the fact to cover that deficit. I think is a much better way. So we're just trying to get everybody to go into this FY26 year clear-eyed and understanding.
Okay. Does that satiate the feedback?
Yes.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we are so over. I'm so sorry. So we have paid parking, revenue, and then the final approval. So Audra, what timeline in terms of for the paid parking? I know we spent a lot, I know last year there was a very, very detailed, lengthy discussion about the paid parking. What is the
All right, I'm gonna,
absolute summation of what you need from this budget committee to give
So-
feedback before you go before the select board?
so I'm just going to cut to the chase. So
Love
the
that.
select board has approved the program. These are the parameters for it. So, the operational period, so May 15th, so Memorial Day weekend to Indigenous Peoples' Day, holiday weekends. The idea is that it would be 7 days a week, starting at 10 a.m., ending at 5 p.m., with the exception of Sundays, where the idea is it would start after church services in town, so afternoon to 5 p.m. There would be a 2-hour limit, but that could be extended as desired. Maximum extension 4 hours on the public landing, $3 per hour. And then all Camden, all vehicles that are registered in Camden would get 2 hours of free parking. So the idea is that this would not impact Camden residents because you're not supposed to be parking longer in the downtown than that 2-hour limit anyway, in the posted areas. So, and then extending the time to pay off fines to 14 days and no other charges on the fine schedule. So if you look at the meter projections, so this is, a calculation of all the spaces, the anticipated revenue from just the meters would be almost $500,000. With the citation revenue, so that's, all the parking violations, all the stuff that we currently do, we're looking at about $589,000 in revenue. The total expenses and this is year one because we have outlay of capital for the purchase of the kiosks. The total would be about $421,000. So the net revenue for year one would be about $168,000. Year two, because that would cover all the cost of the meters. Year two, we'd be looking at net revenue of about $465,000. So that's kind of it. That money, it's very specifically has to be spent on roadway and infrastructure improvements. So all of that money could be plowed back into the debt service that we were talking about for the infrastructure bonds. So that this is one method we have of keeping everybody's taxes lower, because when you look at the debt service we're going to be paying on that $12.5 million bond, it's a total of $700,000 a year. of money that's going to be added to your tax bills.
Mark has a question.
How do you differentiate the Camden vehicles?
So there's going to be a license plate reader that's part of this program. And so any plate that's registered in Camden, it would come up in the system as being,
So it'd be automatic, so the resident doesn't have to do anything.
yes.
The only question I have, and I know that, I don't know if there was a select board meeting previously, or there was a conversation of like, can you rotate your cars every 2 hours, like multi-vehicle? Is there ever a discussion of like a resident parking pass that can just, like you could pay a fixed amount for and then just have, whether you have one vehicle or multiple vehicles or?
Well, this, if your vehicle's registered in Camden, you'd get that regardless.
Right. I just meant in terms of
Just
like
in the-
exceeding the 2 hours.
Just in the 2-hour zone.
In the 2 hours.
Yeah, and if you're going to be parking long-term in Camden, and this is under the current rules, you should be parking in long-term parking anyway and not
Yeah,
in 2-hour
not in the
parking
2 hour
and shuffling.
Okay. Duncan?
The reduction in expenses, went from 400 something thousand to down to 123 something thousand for year 2. Do we have any further, I guess, estimates as to what the expenses for that is going to be, or are we just kind of assuming that it's going to be about $123,000 every year after year 2?
It would be, we'd have to adjust it for, CPI. So things like, wages going up because that includes like the parking enforcement officers. And if like the cost of the software and other supplies. So there would be, an increase that's sort of, based on those costs going up.
Have we factored in any kind of replacement of equipment? Do we know kind of a lifetime, how long this is going to last, or, software updates, things of that nature?
So the equipment itself, the kiosks we're looking at, they're like they can be, the different parts can be upgraded as needed. So it's not like you have to replace the entire kiosk. So that's another thing that, it's a more modest, it's not like a huge capital outlay every 5 years or something like that.
Are these?
Second.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry,
Okay.
I
Go
just
ahead.
want to follow up real quick. And that can be done by like town employees or public works employees, or is that going to have to be a service that's hired out to a private company?
For the most part, we're going to be able to do that kind of thing. Like the battery is just like a car battery that runs the kiosk. So it's a pretty easy system. There's like a panel on the inside, like a touch screen type panel if you open up the kiosk. So there are some like software things that when it comes to that panel that the vendor, like with those upgrades, they would have to help us with.
And did you have to like put a piece of physical paper in your car? Is it printed out, or is it kind of like you can do it on your phone and it's like
Yeah, you can do it on your phone.
you don't have to like print, like walk back to your car and put stuff on. You just basically add time.
Yeah. So you've got it on your phone, but also when they scan your plate,
They'll see that they have the time.
Yeah.
Comments, feedback? Yeah. So you're just looking for general
Yeah, I
feedback
mean,
from
from
us?
from the budget committee's perspective, like, I'm not talking about any other benefits beyond the revenue potential of this and the offset to tax impact that it can have, and how we've tried to design it so it has as little impact as possible on Camden taxpayers.
It's not obstructing wheelchair access on sidewalks where the kiosks are going to be.
No, they absolutely would not. And that's something they've gone around to find like appropriate locations for them so that it's like on a pad that kind of sits a little bit off.
Barb, do you have a question? I see your hand up. But you have to unmute again. And I want to be wherever you are because the background looks really nice. You're still on mute though. What's that? And Barb, whenever you unmute, we can.
Okay,
Oh, there you
my
are.
apologies. I'm in a Little League parking lot in Illinois because I'm traveling, but, sorry. But I want to say, I watched a lot of the John Burke, meetings. I was at a few of them. And if we just like automatically give Camden residents the option to have a, you know, a pass on this, I think that's crazy. I mean, if you're parking downtown and you want to save the $2, $4, $6 park, go to the town office. I mean, this is the only thing we're talking about, the only thing where town can make money and offset tax revenue, you know, the taxpayers' bill. And why are we making it too easy? I mean, every town like ours, every town, and watch John Burke's things, every town that's like ours, they have paid parking. If you don't have paid parking, it's supported parking. I just think, I'm sorry, I'm losing power, but
I think the hope is there'll be enough tourism and individuals that are coming from outside Camden to offset it beyond the 2 hours, right?
But Barb is correct. Like this is very kind of above and beyond what a lot of communities that have this do for residents.
Yeah.
I don't think it's too much to ask residents in town. If they want free parking, go to the town office. Not that much to ask.
Yeah. Did you say Jody had a question before too? I thought you said Jody had something, but no. Any other comments or feedback? Because we have 2 more items and it is 8:45 almost, and I am turning into a pumpkin. So, what's that? This is one of my favorite colors. It makes it very easy to transition into my pumpkinism, but not quite yet.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to get some feedback
Yeah.
on paid parking in general, and the whole idea that you know, if we're not paying for it with user fees, then it's going to be paid for through taxes.
I'll say for myself, Audra, I talked about it when I was on the select board. I'm not a fan of the paid parking, but I can deal with it with the Camden, with the passes for Camden. I think that works really well, because there's oftentimes I come down to French and Braun and I'm here for 10 minutes. And to have to, you know, a quick thing, or I go to the library for 15 minutes, you know, because I live here, those quick trips are really important, and to have to pay, you know, 2 hours. I think I can accept it with the Camden resident passes.
Go ahead, Barb.
If as a Camden resident, you will not have to pay for jumping into French and Braun or going to the library if we do it right. So I propose that we support the paid parking, but we do it so that people have to go into the town office and actually get a parking permit or something like that if they live in the community and they pay taxes for their car. I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
I'm gonna-
Margaret.
That, if the system that they're planning on putting in already has that recognition built in.
Yeah,
You're
you don't
just
have to-
adding another administrative level, which a town clerk or somebody at the office has to take care of. And I lost my parking ticket, so what am I going to do? Or I put it someplace where somebody saw it.
And this is the
it's-
only thing we have that is actually helping taxpayers. Everything else is impacting them and they have to pay their taxes. This offsets their tax bill. Paid parking offsets the tax bill.
Yeah. Well, I'm working under, and I appreciate your feedback, Barb, but I'm working under the assumption that when we go to register our cars, there's going to be, like, our plates are going to be recognized, correct? You know, by the town. And this has been many years in the running, and it looks like it's getting, again, close to the point of getting in front of the select board. And in a year's time, in 2 years' time, there's going to be a look back and assessment of like what's working, what's not. And if there's adjustments that have to be made, that it's not this is it, and it's never going to be modified. So I imagine that once it's in place and people get used to like seeing the kiosks and like working with the kiosks and like walking past them and all those things, and you'll have actual numbers in place that can actually then also be used to make adjustments and modifications.
Yeah, we're gonna have to make a lot of changes to the program because, one of the virtues of it is you get a lot of data over time about what's working, what isn't working, and it gives you the opportunity to adjust as you go along to see what works and what doesn't.
Audra, can I say something? So I was involved in the whole process. And one of the things that you have to remember is that just about every situation has been covered. So like, there's like spaces that are going to be reserved for people just to pull in and pull out. They're going to be like just the quick parking, and there's no charge for those. And then the program doesn't start until, what was it?
End of May.
No, the time in the morning.
Oh, 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock. So, I mean, most
Yeah.
people have gone in and taken care of all their business before 10 o'clock. I mean, there's a lot of things that's built into like allowing people that are from the town to not have to pay. So it's pretty tame parking program, if you could call it that. I mean,
Yeah, go ahead, Karen. You got to,
Something that came up over and over again when I was working down at the Chamber of Commerce was by people with disabilities and had those little blue disability signs. Is there any pass for that, or are they going to have to pay? Because for a while there, they had to pay even with that disability.
They won't, they don't.
We'll work on that.
Yeah, on street, they don't pay, and we've
there's
made
no
it so in
time
the
limit
parking
on
lots, they don't.
handicap, yeah,
Yeah, they don't pay either.
disabled.
I was just going to say,
I'm-
I was going to say, I was on the board when the first parking studies came in. And they do have a lot of information, like Dave said. And so these numbers are probably very accurate about the money that we will make, even making allowances for the Camden residents. Those are, I'm probably pretty sure they will be pretty accurate figures.
Pretty conservative. Like,
Yeah.
he did the model for Bar Harbor, and I think he only estimated they were going to make about less than $500,000 in their first season, and they made over $1 million their very first season. Now they're making like, I don't know, 3 million or something like
Yeah.
that. So
Duncan, I'm going to turn to you. Oh, go ahead.
just one last thing. Remember, this wastewater, we've entered into this wastewater and sewer replacement journey. And we haven't begun to start paying all the debt on it.
I'm not an idiot.
Hey, Barbie, you just want to remute yourself, okay?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's
Go ahead.
tough. It's tough on your phone.
No problem. Go ahead.
So the wastewater thing, no matter how well I manage that department, will continue to grow because the debt service is going to grow. So this is a good way to plug that hole.
I'm just gonna say, by the time we have all the buildings redone and our roads repaved, we'll all be willing to pay $7. I'm just kidding. Don't quote me. for
No, but I
parking.
mean, it is
Yeah.
a good way to try
Yeah,
to fill
no.
that gap.
Duncan, you had your hand raised and then,
Yep, I
and then I'm gonna
just wanted to-
just to go to revenue. Go ahead.
All right, yep. Just a quick point on the parking. I am in favor of having the paid parking. But if we do a kind of a pass hanging from the mirror sort of thing, then we're going to need to keep an account, like in our mind, that for people who rent Airbnbs, like, can they have passes available for the people there? Or do we want those people who are not residents, to be able to, to have to pay when they come into town?
I'm a fan of non-residents paying while they're here.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay. All right. I'm going to push us forward 45 minutes past the hour of our witching hour. So is it, we're going to close the discussion on parking
Yep,
unless
I think
anyone.
we got some good direction.
Okay. So revenue, let's go.
Revenue.
For that.
So that is the blue page in your binders at the very beginning. I think it's page 1 even.
Blue.
That maybe.
You're setting us on a color treasure hunt.
It's a green.
Green?
Not
Depends on
blue,
your
green.
perspective. I say blue.
Wait, it's blue. It's blue.
Green. We're going green. Yeah, we're green. Okay.
All right. So the biggest change that you're all going to need to make is adding $450,000 under the bonds notes proceeds section. So that's in the back. I think if you flip over to the back of your blue sheet, it's towards the very end.
You have 1.756 there now.
Yes.
So you want it to be 1.756 plus 450?
Yes.
Jody, are you still awake to do the final? Because I know the final budget's going to need an revised.
Yeah, that would make that number, 2,206,000.
And it would make the total number? And it would make the total number?
Yeah, exactly.
For the bond note proceeds.
Right, but when we vote on the total revenue,
Oh, you want the entire, so you're voting on the entire thing.
we're being lazy, but
Okay.
Unless you
30
have any,
seconds.
if you really want to
mean,
do
is
a
it-
deep dive into revenues.
does anybody, yeah, save revenues for,
I'll have that in a few seconds here.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions while Jody's calculating?
Okay, so your bottom line revenue number is $8,679,633.
Are we going to vote on that?
I mean, if someone wants to make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we vote on that exact figure that Sarah just wrote down.
$8,679,633. Did we have a second? Yep. Oh,
Question.
oh, wait.
Does that bottom line figure include the mistake that was made under, was it the library?
So that bottom line figures the revenue figure,
Okay.
not your expense.
Do we have a second? Okay. Oh, wait, we got to unmute yourself and then I can let you second it. You got to unmute and then say second.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, should we take a vote?
Oh, wait,
All-
Renee Barb's,
Oh,
I think she, okay.
all
There
right.
she is.
She's back. Okay, any other discussions? Were we good, ready to go to vote? All in favor of the revenue motion? By show of hands? I've got 1, 2. Anybody opposed? Nobody's opposed. Yeah, I'm just saying. Hey, I'm following my process. I have my process. Okay, that revenue is passed. Yay. Let's exceed that expectation. All right, so in terms of the final, our last vote as a committee.
Yes. So the big and I'm so sorry, I know you want to all leave. Do you want to add in an operational subsidy for the snowball? That's kind of the question.
What amount would you suggest?
It would be, I'd recommend the amount that Jeff has identified. 230. $236.
I'll make a motion, we add in the $236,000 for the snowball, operation funds for the snowball.
Second.
Any discussion on it? Well, the only discussion, I'm on answer my own question. So when we added for the fire truck and from before, that was not, I thought there was some potential for the snowball that we put in that. Didn't we do that before?
Oh, that's capital.
Just for capital?
That's capital.
This is just operating.
yeah.
Okay, I got you. Any other discussion for? Okay, I'm calling the vote. Look at me. All in favor? Duncan, okay, is that an in favor or is that a question? Oh, that's a rate. Yep, that's a Okay, anybody opposed? Okay, so it passes. Now, is there a drum? There's no official drum roll, but what's that? No, well, it's happened, it's resonating with all of us, but I think we're going to rely on Jody for what the final
Bottom line.
we need a bottom line from Jody because I do not believe it's on these pages.
Right, so the net general fund budget, which is the gross town expenditures minus the town revenues that you voted on, is $7,108,375, which represents an 8.56% increase over FY '25.
I'll make a motion that we approve the figure that Sarah just wrote down that Jody just gave us.
Second.
Any discussion? Comments, hopes, dreams? No, I'm just kidding.
That would take forever.
I'm just asking. All right, we ready to call for vote? All in,
Just a quick question,
oh,
sorry.
yeah,
I
no,
just
no,
was
no, please don't
wondering
apologize. Go ahead.
How that percentage lined up with what we had going in. We were somewhere around 8%, right? Kind of estimating in the beginning.
The town manager's budget is at 5.5% increase, so you guys have added about 3% to it.
All right, thanks.
Reflections before we go to vote? And that's with all the potential, like everything.
I'd say the biggest thing would be the snowball operational subsidy.
Well, and this also includes the additional personnel for restroom cleaning that we
Yeah,
got.
let's do a little reflection before, for the record and how we're,
Those are the two significant changes.
the additional cleaning personnel and the snowball. Okay. So we have a motion on the floor. So are we ready? Any other discussion? Are we ready to go to vote? Okay, all in favor? I'm looking up. Barb, all opposed? Anyone opposed? Barb, I didn't see yay or nay, so just want to confirm you're on. Yeah, Duncan, are you a yay or are you a nay?
I'm a yay.
You're a yay. That was an enthusiastic yay. Okay,
Yay.
so, all right, so the budget passes our segment. I appreciate everybody. all
Thank you so much.
Time, energy, extra hour plus. Yeah,
And I
and everyone's
can't,
presentation and real thoughtfulness to kind of how we came about it, so.
can't thank you enough for toughing it through the whole process, and especially all the special revenue funds, because it can be convoluted as to how they impact everything, and you all really took the time to understand it. So thank you.
Awesome. Anyone want to?
Yeah,
I'd like,
is it beneficial or not to have some people there from the budget committee when the select board
Oh,
goes
for
through it,
sure.
or the next select board members there that already know?
I think it's always
Oh, yeah.
helpful.
Show
I
up
think it's
if you
always
can.
helpful.
Go ahead, Mark.
I'd like to make a motion to, one, thank Sarah for chairing this, and second, to adjourn.
Ah, that's so nice. Thank you. And anyone, and to adjourn, we good? All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.